Chapter 25. As Leng Shiqi's cultivation advanced to the pure spirit realm, the chaotic flower's dazzling eyes technique became stronger. He could now unleash 4 strikes in an instant. Moreover, it was more flexible, real and fake, making it impossible for people to figure out where the real killing intent was. Of course, against spirit cultivators of the spirit-gathering realm, this advantage did not manifest because they were too weak and did not need to be so flashy. At the same time, he was also a little emotional. Less than 2 months ago, the 9th level of the spirit-gathering realm was an existence he had to look up to. And now, such a person didn't even have a chance to resist in his hands. This was power. Of course, now was not the time to be emotional. Leng Shiqi looked at the remaining 3 people expressionlessly. These 3 were the weakest, only at the 7th level of the spirit-gathering realm, so they stayed behind. Since they were all from the same faction, if he let them go, it would definitely cause endless trouble, so he could only silence them. When the remaining 3 saw that the other party did not keep his promise and started to kill, how could they dare to stay where they were? One by one they ran in different directions. Unfortunately, their legs had been stabbed by Leng Shiqi, so how could they outrun Leng Shiqi, who had a body technique at the perfection stage? In just a moment, 2 people had died tragically at his hands, and the last person had his neck held by Leng Shiqi's sword. "Tell me about the Beilichuan," Leng Shiqi asked coldly. Will you let me go if I tell you? Since I'm going to die anyway, do it?" The person was unyielding, and after saying that he closed his eyes, looking like he was going to die for a righteous cause. Oh. Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. He did not expect there to be someone who was not afraid of death. You have backbone, you have loyalty, but you may not know that there are many things in this world that make people wish they were dead. Do you want to try? Leng Shiqi's sword moved down, the tip of the sword pointing to the lower part of the person's abdomen. The person immediately trembled, his face turning pale, and shouted, You're not human. Don't be so nervous. I've always been a kind person. As long as you tell me, maybe I'll be happy and let you go. Besides, I only need to ask around to find out about the Beilichuan. I just don't want to trouble you, Leng Shiqi said with what he thought was a friendly smile. But in the eyes of that person, Leng Shiqi was no different from a demon. In the end, he sighed and told him everything he knew. I only hope that you can give me a quick death. Leng Shiqi nodded and gave him a quick death. He murmured, this Beilichuan is developing rapidly. Since they are developing their forces, they will definitely have conflicts with the Delta Origi. This time we wiped out a small team from the Beilichuan. It can be said that we've hurt our tendons and broken our bones. It can also be considered as indirectly helping the Delta Origi. Then Leng Shiqi tore off the water bags and parcels from the 7 people. This group of people came out to replenish their food and water. There were more than 20 water bags alone, and of course they were still empty. Leng Shiqi put them all away and continued to walk in the direction of the water source. However, even Leng Shiqi didn't notice that after he left for a while, a dark figure quietly left. The process of getting water was relatively smooth. One thing worth noting was that Leng Shiqi found footprints left by monsters near the water source. It seemed that this so-called stable period wouldn't last long. Leng Shiqi filled nearly 30 water bags with water and even more food at the water source. After he broke through to the pure spirit realm, his need for these things had decreased a little. If he used them sparingly now, it would be enough to last him for about 2 months. Then Leng Shiqi looked around. Seeing that there was no one around, he stuffed all these things into his backpack, leaving only 2 water bags and a parcel on his body. When he returned to the tree hole, the tension in his heart finally loosened. Even though he was already in the pure spirit realm, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless when walking outside. Today's trip, he seemed to show off his might and didn't treat the spirit-gathering realm as people, casually killing them. But before that, he also deliberately consumed some of their spiritual power, and also left a trace of possibility of survival in their hearts, not forcing them to fight with their lives on the line. Otherwise, Leng Shiqi wouldn't have been able to kill them so easily. It was very likely that 1 or 2 of them would run away and go back to report, then he would directly become a mortal enemy with the Beilichuan in the future. Moreover, as his spiritual power became more abundant, the bottleneck of the pure spirit realm became less difficult. There would definitely be more and more spirit cultivators in the pure spirit realm, so he absolutely couldn't let his guard down. After resting for a while, Leng Shiqi took out the biggest harvest of the day: weapons and spiritual skills. If there was anything that could increase Leng Shiqi's combat power at the fastest speed, it would undoubtedly be spiritual skills. With the system and unlimited skill points, he could directly cultivate his spiritual skills to perfection. This was something that no one else could do, and it was also his greatest reliance. The weapons were 2 blades and 2 swords. Lung Shiqi kept 1 sword as a spare and sold the rest to the system, and the system coins became 33. 5 spiritual skills, some were written on rags, some were carved on tree bark. Among them there were 3 that weren't ranked, 2 blade techniques and 1 leg technique. Lung Shiqi didn't care about spiritual skills of this level. Of course he still had to learn what he needed to learn. As the saying goes, it's never a burden to have more skills. Moreover, the strengthening of the body by cultivating spiritual skills wasn't small. What he cared about the most was Yanjiu's Howling Tiger Fist. He remembered that the Howling Tiger Fist in the hands of Blood 36 was very powerful. Lung Shiqi's current spiritual skills were mostly flexible, and he really lacked such a fierce spiritual skill. There was also Wu's 67 spiritual skill, Sonic Shockwave, which was similar to the Lion Roar in his previous life. If he were to suddenly shout like this during a battle, it would definitely be a good way to win by a surprise move. Next, Lung Shiqi sat cross-legged, called out the system, and began to cultivate these 5 spiritual skills. Not long after, Lung Shiqi stood up with a whoosh. He simply moved his body and found that the strength in his limbs had increased by a lot. He looked at his information. Name: Lung Shiqi Lu Xingji. Cultivation: Level 2 of the Pure Spirit Realm Technique. Level 1 Technique: Mountain Shattering Force Bloodline. Spiritual skills: Unranked spiritual skill, Triple Water Ripple Palm, Perfection. Unranked spiritual skill, Basic Sword Technique, Perfection. Unranked spiritual skill, 1 Breaking Blade Technique, Perfection. Unranked spiritual skill, 1 Hand Blade, Perfection. Unranked spiritual skill, 3 Shadow Kick, Perfection. Level 1 spiritual skill, Confusion Footwork, Perfection. Level 1 spiritual skill, Willow Sword Style, Perfection. Level 1 spiritual skill, Ghost Jade Claw, Perfection. Level 1. Spiritual skill, Howling Tiger Fist, Perfection. Level 1 spiritual skill, Sonic Shockwave, Perfection. Special spiritual skill, Hand of the Earth, Perfection. System coins: 33. Looking at the list of spiritual skills in the system, Lung Shiqi thought to himself, I've already cultivated so many spiritual skills without realizing it. Chapter 26. Although Lung Shiqi had cultivated a lot of spiritual skills, half of them were not ranked. These spiritual skills were not very useful, and the key was that they were all rank 1 spiritual skills. Only 2 of them were given by the Delta Origi, and the rest were snatched. Moreover, these rank 1 spiritual skills were distributed very well. There were movement techniques, sword techniques, fist and palm techniques, and the surprising sound wave technique. The Hand of Earth was also useful, and could be considered as a great supplement. Lung Shiqi nodded his head in satisfaction. He was confident that even in the pure spirit realm, his strength was one of the top few. Of course, he did not become arrogant because in his eyes, the real opponents were not these captured children. After thinking for a while, Lung Shiqi felt that what he lacked the most now was a handy weapon. His original rank 1 spiritual weapon, the Fine Iron Sword, was destroyed by the blood-spotted leopard. The long sword he was using now was just an ordinary weapon, and it was already a bit of a burden. There were still about 10 days before the next spray of cultivation materials, so he could not count on it for the time being. Thus, Lung Shiqi saw that he still had 33 system coins. Staring at the lottery interface, Lung Shiqi decided to use the system coins to draw 3 times. This was the only use of the system coins at present, and it would be a waste if he did not use it. But thinking of the prizes he had drawn before, the only valuable thing was the lightning arrow, and it was a one-time use item. As for the other 2 things, it was not worth mentioning. Lung Shiqi shook his head, adjusted his mentality and clicked on the beginner lottery 3 times in a row. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, 10 thorny ropes. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, 1 fine dagger. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, 1 strengthening talisman. There were a few extra things in the tree hole. Lung Shiqi looked at them one by one. He first picked up a thorny rope, each of which was about 10 feet long, with more than a dozen barbed iron caltrops strung on it. I can use this as an early warning method. If I hide the thorny rope in the quagmire, it will alarm me if someone or a monster approaches. This thing was still useful. Then he picked up the dagger and casually played with it a few times. He felt that it was quite handy, mainly because the spiritual power was transferred smoothly, and it was much better than the small dagger from before. Lung Shiqi directly threw the original dagger to the system and exchanged it for 6 system coins, but it was not enough for 1 lottery. Finally, he looked at the strengthening talisman. It was a yellowed talisman paper with a mysterious blue pattern engraved on it. When Leng Shiqi picked it up, a line of words appeared beside it. It can increase the grade of spirit tools below the 3rd rank by 1. Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. This strengthening talisman was a good thing. If he had a level 2 spiritual chi weapon, he could directly raise it to level 3 with the strengthening talisman. Even level 2 spiritual chi had a level 2 spiritual chi's was level 2 spiritual chi, level 2 spiritual chi, a level 2 spiritual level 3 spiritual chi. Of course, this was to maximize the effectiveness of the strengthening talisman. If it really did not work, it was completely acceptable to raise the level 1 spiritual chi to level 2. At this time, Leng Shiqi glanced at the long sword beside him, then put away the strengthening talisman. An ordinary long sword was not worth using this strengthening talisman. Although it could give him another level 1 spiritual weapon, to be honest, Leng Shiqi's improvement was not very big. He planned to wait until the next eruption of cultivation resources. It would be best if he could get a spiritual weapon, if not, he would use it on this long sword. Then Leng Shiqi spent some time to arrange the thorny rope and entered into cultivation. In this trip, he completely felt the benefits of being strong, so he should speed up his cultivation. While Leng Shiqi was cultivating on the other side in an open space near the mountain wall, there were about 30 people busily going in and out. They were talking and laughing, and it looked quite lively. They had already set up a few sheds in the surrounding area. In the largest shed in the center, a tall young man was sitting on a stone stool. Looking at his expression, he did not seem to be in a good mood. Beside him stood a black-faced young man, smiling as he said, "Leader, don't mind it too much. This time, it's fine to let that brat Wuxia take advantage of us. After all, we were few in number and could not use force. When Wu Liqui and the rest return, we will reorganize and teach that brat a lesson." The person sitting there was actually the leader of the Beilichuan, an expert of the pure spirit realm, the one who changed his name to Bailey Qing. The Beilichuan had just been established not long ago. Although they had already won over many people in the early stages, the other pure spirit realm experts all followed suit and established their own forces. All of a sudden, there was a conflict in terms of recruitment. Especially some high-level spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm, they were the focus of competition among several forces. Not long ago, the Beilichuan brought people to recruit a small team of 4. The leader of the team was at the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm, while the rest of the team members were at the 7th and 8th level. They were not weak at all. However, Wuxia appeared out of nowhere. Wuxia had also established his own force called the Yushu clan. He also brought people to recruit that small team. At that time, Bailey Qing did not bring many people with him, but Wuxia brought a total of 30 people with him. Since he was inferior, Bailey Qing could only take a step back. However, he could not take this lying down. That Wuxia is a slippery fellow. His mouth is full of cannons. I really want to tear his mouth apart. Alright, why is Wu Liqui not back yet? It should be enough time. Blood 51, did something happen to them? The moment the Beilichuan thought of Wuxia, his entire body was filled with anger. Suddenly he recalled that the small team he sent out to fetch water had yet to return. Blood 51, who was standing at the side, pondered for a moment before replying, "It shouldn't be." With the strength of their group, even if they encountered a pure spirit realm expert, they would still be able to put up a fight. Furthermore, the rank 1 demonic beast has yet to appear. I really can't imagine what kind of accident could have happened. Hearing this, Bailey Qing nodded in agreement. Right at this moment, a person rushed in from outside. His expression was somewhat flustered, and he was carrying a blood-stained cloth bag in his hand. Captain, it's bad." The moment that person entered, he shouted incoherently. "What do you mean it's bad? Captain is doing well." Blood 51 immediately reprimanded. Bailey Qing waved his hand and his gaze landed on the cloth bag. A bad premonition welled up in his heart. "Don't panic. Speak, what happened?" "Captain, when I was patrolling outside, someone suddenly said that he wanted to join the Beilichuan. I took a look and saw that he was only at the 6th level of the spirit gathering realm. I thought that this person did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, so I dismissed him. However, he said that he came with sincerity. He wanted to tell Captain a secret, so he gave me this thing. Inside is... The person stuttered as he spoke. Bailey Qing's expression changed as if he had thought of something. He took a step forward and snatched the cloth bag. When he opened it, he saw that it was Wu Liqui's head. Chapter 27. This is Wu 67. Who is it? Who dares to do this? Who dares to kill a member of the Beilichuan? Blood 51's hair stood on end at the sight of the bloody head. Just a moment ago he had boasted to Bailey Qing that nothing would go wrong, but now the head had been tossed in front of him. Would Bailey Qing still trust him in the future? As for Bailey Qing, he didn't make much of a fuss, but his expression was already as dark as water. Even though he didn't yell or scream, he gave off an even more terrifying aura. Go, invite the person who delivered the head in here, Bailey Qing said in a low voice. Yes, it must be related to that person. Don't let him get away. Blood 51 chimed in. Bailey Qing glanced at him but didn't say anything. However, Blood 51's heart sank, and he cursed himself for losing his composure and speaking out of turn. How could a puny cultivator at the 6th layer of the Spirit Assembly realm kill Wu 67? Furthermore, he didn't act alone, but rather in a team of 7. The person who delivered the message had most likely witnessed the entire process and was here to ask for a reward. A short while later, a skinny young man walked in with a cloth bag in his hand, which was also stained with blood. Bailey Qing's eyes narrowed and he said, "This is Yen 9, right? No need to say anything else, tell me who did it. From now on you're my brother and the Beilichuan will protect you." The man faltered slightly upon hearing this. He didn't think that Bailey Qing would be so straightforward, and the speech he had prepared was completely useless. He couldn't help but feel elated and he said, as expected of the Beilichuan, "Musan 30 is impressed. The person who killed our brothers is someone called Leng Shiqi, and he's also at the Pure Spirit stage." Pure Spirit stage? Leng Shiqi? Bailey Qing was first stunned but then he became a little puzzled. Come to think of it, the person who could kill that group had to be at the Pure Spirit stage. Otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do it. However, he had never heard of this Leng Shiqi. As the saying went, people of a certain cultivation level would come into contact with people of similar cultivation levels. Bailey Qing knew that none of the nearby Pure Spirit stage cultivators by the name of Leng Shiqi. There were only two possibilities. Firstly, this person was not someone who was active in this area. Since they weren't from this area, there shouldn't be any conflicts for the time being. So why would they kill people from the Beilichuan for no reason? Secondly, he had just broken through to the Pure Spirit realm. However, how could someone who had just broken through to the Pure Spirit realm possibly annihilate his team of 7? The more he thought about it, the more confused Bailey Qing was. The people around him didn't dare to interrupt his thoughts. They were all waiting for him to speak. Blood 51's shouts had attracted a lot of attention, and they were all waiting for Bailey Qing to make a decision. After a long while, the look in Bailey Qing's eyes changed several times. Finally, he said in a low voice, "Try your best to find out the whereabouts of Leng Shiqi. Anyone who dares to touch my Bailey group must pay the price. However, you must be careful. After all, the other party is in the Pure Spirit realm. If you discover his whereabouts, don't act rashly and inform me immediately." Yes. 20 to 30 members of the 100-mile group who were in the spirit gathering state responded in unison. "You can leave as well. I'm going to cultivate." Bailey Qing closed his eyes and said without looking at them. Blood 51 naturally knew that Bailey Qing was talking about him. He sighed deeply in his heart, bowed slightly and walked out. In the past, Bailey Qing had always asked him to guard him when he was cultivating. That was the greatest trust he had for him. Now that trust was no longer as firm. When Blood 51 walked out of the shed, a hesitant expression appeared on his face. In the end, he stood respectfully at the side of the shed and remained motionless. Leng Shiqi naturally didn't know that his actions had been discovered by the Beilichuan. He had been cultivating wholeheartedly. Because he had only broken through to the Pure Spirit realm after consuming a spirit fruit, Leng Shiqi was afraid of leaving behind any hidden dangers. Instead, he was constantly refining the spirit qi in his sea of qi. The benefit of the mountain-crushing force cultivation method was reflected in this. It was quite fast in refining spirit qi. Cultivating like this, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 days, even if Leng Shiqi didn't go out, he could feel that the Blood Mist Island was becoming more and more restless. Every once in a while, he could faintly hear the roars of demonic beasts. Those sounds contained quite a bit of spirit qi. It was obvious that they were rank 1 demonic beasts. After the heavenly collapse, the demonic beasts had finally appeared, and they were rank 1 demonic beasts. Leng Shiqi believed that even if he were to fight the blood-spotted leopard alone, he wouldn't have the confidence to win. Then what would happen to the others if they encountered a rank 1 demonic beast? It seems that the number of spirit cultivators on the Blood Mist Island will be reduced again. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Tick-tock. Lung Shichi suddenly stood up. Just now he seemed to have heard a special sound. Tick-tock. Another sound came, and Lung Shichi confirmed that he didn't hear wrong. His upper body leaned out of the tree hole and looked at the blood-colored light screen in the sky. At this moment, the blood-colored light screen looked incomparably dim, as if a dark cloud had appeared. Dark cloud? It's going to rain? Lung Shichi muttered in surprise. Rain seemed to be a very normal thing and there was no need to make a fuss about it. However, ever since he came to the Blood Mist Island for an entire year, it had never rained on the Blood Mist Island. There had never been a change in the weather. Why did it suddenly rain today? Could it be related to the heavenly collapse? Lung Shichi subconsciously stretched out his hand, wanting to see if it was really raining. Tick-tock. A drop of rain fell on his palm. Suddenly, Lung Shichi felt a pain in his palm. He hurriedly retracted his palm and looked carefully. At this moment, a small gray spot had appeared on his palm. The spot seemed to be constantly seeping into his flesh and blood, causing the skin on his palm to break open. Hiss. Lung Shichi stepped back, his face full of shock. His hands had been practicing spiritual techniques for many years in the gray space, and a thick layer of calluses had already grown on them. However, this drop of rain actually broke the skin on his hand. This rain was extremely corrosive. Lung Shichi hurriedly wrapped his body in a black robe and took out 2 bags to wrap his head. Then he walked out of the tree hole and quickly broke off the thick branches and leaves beside him to block the entrance of the tree hole. When Lung Shichi finished doing all this, he took off his black robe and looked at it. There were already 20 to 30 holes of various sizes on it. What would happen if this rain fell on a person's body? Lung Shichi couldn't help but shiver when he thought of this. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Splash. Not long after, the rain outside became heavier and heavier. Chapter 28. Lung Shichi, who was hiding, was very glad that he had dug a tree hole immediately after the heavenly collapse. If it was outside, even if you were in the pure spirit realm, even if you had many spiritual techniques, under such a corrosive rain, if you did not find a place to take shelter in time, it would be difficult to escape death. Heavenly collapse. Corrosive rain, rank 1 monster. This series of huge changes is not something that the spirit cultivators in Blood Mist Island can deal with at this stage. This will only cause many people with potential to die in vain. What is the person behind this thinking? Lung Shichi also could not understand why such a huge change would suddenly occur in Blood Mist Island, catching everyone off guard. Could it be that I was wrong before? Lung Shichi began to doubt his previous judgment. Perhaps the person behind the scenes was not to nurture talents at all, but this was completely a game? Watching these weak youths die one after another without being able to resist the game? Hearing that the rain outside had become a torrential downpour, Lung Shichi withdrew his thoughts. No matter how much he thought, it was useless. Only strength was the most important. Lung Shichi immediately began to cultivate again. Of course, this time he did not put all of his attention into cultivation, but left a part of his mind to pay attention to the movements outside. The sound of the falling rain seemed to be mixed with some screams. At the same time, he was silently worried about a person. About 4 hours later, the rain stopped. Lung Shichi did not go out but continued to cultivate. Although the rain had stopped, the rain was still there. It was not until 2 days later that Lung Shichi carefully pushed aside the branches and leaves at the entrance of the cave and walked out. At this time he saw a world full of devastation. Although it had experienced a heavenly collapse before, and the nearby trees were crooked, at least it was still lush. However, it had completely turned into a withered land. Looking around, there were plants everywhere that were rotten to the point of being hideous. Wait. Before Lung Shichi had time to sigh, he suddenly thought of something. After this corrosive rain, won't there be no food and water? In the past, everyone basically ate the wild fruits or stems on these plants for food. After this rain, almost all the plants were corroded to death. What would they eat in the future? There was no need to even mention the source of water. It was unknown just how much corrosive rain had been mixed into it, so who would dare to drink it? The sudden change made it difficult for Lung Shichi to accept for a while. Even if he had a lot of food and water in his backpack, they would run out one day. What should he do after that? This decaying rain brought them a calamity that was no weaker than the heavens' collapse. Lung Shichi couldn't help but sigh. He turned to look at his tree hole and frowned. It was precisely because the tree was too big that it was corroded beyond recognition. This time, he hid in the tree hole and survived the corrosive rain, but he might not be able to survive the next one. Looks like it's time to move again, Lung Shichi said helplessly, then packed up the things in the tree hole and left. There was still a glimmer of hope in his heart, and that was that the rain did not cover the entire Blood Mist Island. Perhaps there were some areas where it was not raining. In that case there was still room for them to live. Of course, the competition and conflicts would also skyrocket. Lung Shiqi ran in a direction. He decided that even if he had to go around the entire Blood Mist Island, he would find a place to stay. It didn't take long for Lung Shiqi to come across dozens of corpses that were too horrible to look at. There were even a few ordinary demonic beasts amongst them. Lung Shiqi did not care about these, because he had already discovered something strange. There was a blood-colored tower in the center of the Blood Mist Island. This was something that everyone knew. The blood-colored tower was built on top of a small mountain. And that small mountain was still in perfect condition. It was still covered with a dense forest, and large patches of green formed a sharp contrast with the place where Lung Shiqi was. Lung Shiqi sighed in relief. At least there was still food and water. However, the area of this small mountain was not very large. If everyone wanted food and water, they had to go up the mountain, so the possibility of encountering each other was very high. One had to know that demonic beasts also needed to drink water. Now, the danger of collecting food and water had greatly increased, but it was also necessary for survival. Conflicts and fights were inevitable. Lung Shiqi was not too worried as he was a lone ranger. After all, he was still in the pure spirit realm, and he still had the strength to collect food and water. Seeing the mountain, Lung Shiqi suddenly thought of a place, and that place seemed to be a very reliable place to stay. That was the cave where he had joined forces with Delta Origi and Ushursi to kill the blood-spotted leopard and pluck the spirit fruit. That cave had collapsed during the heavens collapse. Ordinary people would definitely not be able to enter, but Lung Shiqi might be able to. At this time, Lung Shiqi had an idea. He immediately identified the direction and ran towards the cave in his memory. When Lung Shiqi arrived at the cave, it was already more than 4 hours later. It was not because the distance was too far, but because after the heavens collapse and the corrosive rain, the appearance of the terrain had changed greatly. Lung Shiqi, who had only been here once, searched for a long time before he found this cave. On the way he also encountered a rank 1 monster. Although the monster was born with rough skin and thick flesh, it was also drenched in the corrosive rain. Its body was full of holes and it looked like it was on the verge of death. However, Lung Shiqi did not beat the dog when it was down. No matter how weak the monster was, it was still a rank 1 monster. It was definitely not as weak as he imagined. In addition, Lung Shiqi still remembered the mutation of the blood-spotted leopard before it died. He did not plan to take the initiative to find trouble with the monster, so he took a detour. At this time, Lung Shiqi looked at the entrance of the cave that was blocked by a huge rock. He rubbed his palms and walked to the entrance of the cave. He pressed his hands on the huge rock, and then the huge rock began to melt like snow under the scorching sun. Not only did it melt, but after it melted, the rock was reshaped. After a while, the huge rock turned into a narrow stone door. However, behind the stone door there were still pieces of stone. But Lung Shiqi's eyes were filled with surprise and he thought, it really works. The hand of earth has such a wonderful use. Then Lung Shiqi took 2 steps inside and continued to use the hand of earth to change the shape of the rock. About half an hour later, Lung Shiqi opened up a passageway that could only allow 1 person to pass through. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's face was a little pale. After using the hand of earth for a long time, even if he was in the pure spirit realm, it was a little too much for him. Lung Shiqi returned to the edge of the cave and sealed the cave from the inside. From the outside it still looked like the cave was blocked by a huge rock. After entering the cave, Lung Shiqi continued to walk inside. When he couldn't go through, he used the hand of earth to create a passage. When the sky fell and the earth cracked, this cave really collapsed. Lung Shiqi recovered his spirit power halfway and came to the deepest part of the cave. This was the place where they fought for the spirit fruit. Chapter 29. What surprised Lung Shiqi the most was that the spirit fruit tree was still alive. It was even emitting a weak light. The cave had collapsed, but it was still intact. Then he smelled a pungent stench and there was a hint of burnt smell. It was the smell of Wu Air, the other 2, and the blood-spotted leopard's corpse. Because the cave was sealed, they all gathered here. Lung Shiqi adapted and then muttered to himself. First, he took back the 3 silver needles from the 3 people and then began to get busy. In the next 2 days, Lung Shiqi was busy setting up his home. Now this cave was the best place for Lung Shiqi to stay. If nothing unexpected happened, he would stay here for a long time, so he naturally had to make some arrangements. He also sealed the passage from the entrance of the cave, which was several feet long, and made it into a secret door. If someone accidentally came in from the cave, they would only stay at the outermost area. Further in, he set up quagmires and thorny ropes as traps. If someone found the secret door, they would step into the trap and Leng Shiqi would naturally find out. After passing through here, one would come to the depths of the cave. Inside, there were blood-spotted leopard's corpse and Sunju's bones, as well as broken weapon fragments. If someone came here, they would think that there were people living here before, but then suddenly encountered a monster and everyone died together. The most important thing was that Leng Shiqi completely sealed the area around the spirit fruit tree. This was his real hiding place. Also, he poked a few holes at the top so he didn't have to worry about air. In the end, Leng Shiqi even moved some branches, leaves and grass from the small hill outside and made a small bed with them. Looking at the small bed that could barely be called a bed, Leng Shiqi laughed. He laughed very happily, because he hadn't had a good night's sleep in a long time. Ever since he came to Blood Mist Island, he spent most of his nights cultivating, but cultivating couldn't completely replace sleeping. He would only take a nap when he was really tired, and it was a very light sleep because he couldn't calm down. Once he fell into a deep sleep, he might never wake up again. Things were different now. With so many safeguards, he could finally have a good night's sleep. Leng Shiqi gently laid down on the small bed. Suddenly, a wave of fatigue swept over his body. His head tilted and not long after he fell into a deep sleep. Unknowingly, the corner of his mouth revealed a faint smile. It turned out that humans could be satisfied so easily. Leng Shiqi slept for almost 2 days. When he woke up, he was absolutely refreshed. His entire body felt relaxed and comfortable. Then a rumbling sound came from his stomach. Leng Shiqi was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly took out some food and water from his backpack and began to eat and drink. Although he was eating wild fruits and drinking cold water, he was still very satisfied. Leng Shiqi, who had eaten his fill, suddenly had a feeling of wanting more. He shook his head repeatedly to get rid of this absurd thought. Just as he was about to cultivate, a series of rumbling sounds suddenly came from outside the cave. Leng Shiqi's face changed when he heard this. He hurriedly ran out of the cave and saw dozens of different colored lights falling from the sky. It was all kinds of cultivation resources. Leng Shiqi roughly calculated and found that something was wrong. In the past, cultivation resources would only erupt once every half a month. Now only about 10 days had passed. Moreover, the number of eruptions was a bit more than before. More importantly, there were about a dozen rays of light that were obviously much denser. Needless to say, the things inside were definitely better than the others. So that's how it is. The cultivation resources are given more frequently, in more quantity, and of better quality. If you want to use this method to increase the strength of the spirit cultivators, it will also make the competition more intense. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, but at the same time, his eyes were not idle. Leng Shiqi clearly knew that he didn't lack cultivation methods or spirit techniques. What he lacked the most was a weapon, and it would be best if it was a sword. The box that flickered with red light contained weapons. He raised his eyes and looked into the distance, quickly locking onto a red light. Moreover, this red light flickered brighter than the others. Time waits for no man. Leng Shiqi immediately rushed towards the location where the red light fell. Leng Shiqi ran at full speed. When he encountered some complicated terrain, he directly used the chaotic footwork to pass through. Although this chaotic footwork was a movement-type spirit technique, it could be used to rush through the journey. It was just that it consumed a lot of spirit chi. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi's current cultivation was at the second level of the pure spirit realm, so he could still withstand it. The reason why he was so anxious was because the faster he arrived, the more he would have the upper hand. Along the way, Leng Shiqi also encountered a few groups of people, but they were all spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm. When they saw him, they didn't dare to provoke him and avoided him. When Leng Shiqi's eyes had already seen the box flashing with red light, he was still a step too late. There was already a person standing there about to pick up the box. At this time, that person also saw Leng Shiqi. When he sensed that he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation, his expression changed greatly. He hurriedly picked up the box and ran. As he ran, he shouted loudly, "Sect Master, save me! Sect Master, save me! I picked up the box." "You're courting death." Leng Shiqi snorted coldly. His feet moved and he quickly approached. The distance between the two was rapidly closing. Just as Leng Shiqi was about to catch up, a blade suddenly slashed out from the side. Leng Shiqi didn't panic. He moved his feet and dodged, but he felt that the blade technique was a little familiar. "Leng Shiqi." A familiar voice sounded in his ears. Lung Shiqi looked carefully. The person who made the move was Yu Shirsi, the person who worked together with him to kill the blood-spotted leopard in the cave. He remembered that the Delta Origi wanted to kill him back then. It was a pity that Yu Shirsi was still alive when the heaven-collapsing calamity happened. So it's you, Yu Shirsi. Lung Shiqi said indifferently. However, there was a trace of killing intent in his voice. He had never forgotten that Yu Shirsi had plotted against him back then. No. Don't call me Yu Shirsi. It's so unpleasant to hear. Now my name is Yushu. Yushu. Yu Shirsi didn't seem to sense Lung Shiqi's killing intent at all. Instead, he tidied his hair and introduced himself in a posture that he thought was very handsome. The corner of Lung Shiqi's eyes couldn't help but twitch. He was speechless. Why is it so popular to change one's name now? Is this a trend started by Bailey Qing? Sect Master. Here, this is something I picked up. I want to offer it to Sect Master. I was almost killed by him. The person who was chased by Lung Shiqi ran to Yu Shirsi's side and obediently offered the red box. Good. You have a bright future ahead of you to be able to snatch this treasure from the hands of a pure spirit realm expert. When we return, I will reward you well. Yu Shirsi beamed with joy as he received the box. He didn't place Lung Shiqi in his eyes at all. He even opened the box and took out a sword with a scabbard. Although the sword wasn't unsheathed, one could faintly feel a sharp aura. It was definitely a grade 2 spiritual sword. Chapter 30. When Lung Shiqi saw the grade 2 spirit sword, his heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything. Since the item was taken by someone else, then he could only snatch it. Just as he was about to attack, Yu Shirsi waved his hand and said, Hold it. Brother Lung, don't be agitated. Let's talk things over. But when he saw that Lung Shiqi had no intention of talking nonsense with him, he quickened his pace and said, Brother Ling, you killed quite a few people from Beilichuan, and Bailey Qing is looking for you everywhere. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat, but his expression didn't change as he replied. Brother Lung, stop pretending. You can only blame yourself for being too careless when you killed those people. You didn't even know that someone saw you. A few days ago, someone ran to Bailey Qing to inform him. He's looking everywhere for your whereabouts. So what? What does that have to do with you? Lung Shiqi saw that Yu Shirsi didn't seem to be lying to him, and there was no need for him to do so. Because the information wasn't true, it was easy to verify. Lung Shiqi could only scold himself for not being careful enough. He didn't notice that there was someone nearby at that time. That's too estranged. No matter what, we have been through life and death together, so there is still some friendship between us. Moreover, I have some enmity with Bailey Qing, and Brother Lung killed his entire team. It can be considered as a serious injury. Recently, he has been suppressed by me, and this is all thanks to Brother Lung. Yu Shirsi paused for a moment, raised his spirit sword, and continued. If Brother Lung wants this weapon, Yushu should offer it to you. Lung Shiqi narrowed his eyes. He naturally didn't believe that Yu Shirsi would take the initiative to hand it over. There must be something else. As expected, Yu Shirsi continued, as long as Brother Lung is willing to join my Yushu clan, I will offer the position of vice sect leader and this weapon to you. If we work together, who will be our match in this area? Vice sect leader? Lung Shiqi asked. That's right, Brother Lung, you can consider it carefully. Currently, our Yushu clan has a total of 83 brothers, and 8 of them are at the 9th level of the Spirit Gathering realm. This level of strength isn't something that Beilichuan and Jet Black Gate can compare to, Yu Shirsi said proudly. Lung Shiqi was also moved when he heard this. After the series of upheavals on the Blood Fog Island, there were not many people left. He remembered that at the very beginning, there were over 10,000 young men and women who were thrown in. A large number of them died in the beginning, and after about half a year, only half of them were left. In the next half a year, everyone began to form small teams with each other. Fewer people died, but it did not stop. The most serious one was the heavenly collapse. At that time, almost everyone was in the periphery. Those who survived in the end were either strong or lucky. Moreover, there was another decaying rain 2 days ago and more people died. Lung Shiqi estimated that there would be at most 1,000 or 2,000 people who could survive until the heavenly collapse. Now, Yu Shirsi was able to gather a force of nearly 100 people. However, Lung Shiqi managed to obtain some information from Yu Shirsi's words. There should be 3 forces in the vicinity. They were Yu Shirsi's Yushu clan, Bailey Qing's Beilichuan, and Jet Black Gate. Jet Black Gate doesn't seem to be a name given by the Delta Origi. This means that the Delta Origi's forces aren't in this region. Lung Shiqi thought to himself. Brother Lung, what do you think? Don't worry, if you join the Yushu clan, I won't make any demands on you. From then on, you won't have to worry about food and water. You can just focus on cultivating. I will even try my best to satisfy your needs for cultivation resources. In addition, if you become the deputy sect leader of the Yushu clan, that brat Bailey Qing won't dare to find trouble with you anymore. Yushursi saw that Leng Shichi wasn't speaking, so he quickly increased his bargaining chip. However, no matter what he said, Leng Shichi wouldn't join the Yushu clan. Yushursi, there's no point in talking so much. I won't join the Yushu clan. You've been delaying for so long because you're waiting for people to come. However, you should know that the more people that come, the more people I can kill. Leng Shichi said as he pointed his sword at Yushursi. His entire body became like a sharp sword. Yushursi's face turned gloomy. One of the people beside him immediately said, "Sect leader, you invited him so humbly, but he still doesn't know what's good for him. So what if he's in the pure spirit realm? We have so many people, killing him won't be a problem." Shut up, idiot. If it's so easy to kill, why would I waste my time talking to him? He cultivates a movement-type spiritual skill. No matter how many spirit-gathering realm cultivators there are, they'll just be there for him to kill. Otherwise, how do you think he wiped out all of Bailey Qing's subordinates? Do you want me to follow in Bailey Qing's footsteps? Yushursi scolded in a low voice. Then he continued in a deep voice, "Besides, he has a very mysterious trump card. It's extremely powerful and even I can't withstand it. He also has a close relationship with that Delta Orgi. That lass's influence on the other side is 30% stronger than ours. We can't kill this person. We can't afford to kill him." Then what should we do? Aren't we riding a tiger and having no way to back down now? Are we really going to give him the weapon? It's very likely that the weapon in there is a second-grade weapon. Step aside. I have my own ways. Yes. Yushursi walked out of the crowd with his dagger. He struck a pose that he thought was dashing and said, "Leng Shichi, I've already said it. Call me Yushu. Yushu from facing the wind. Forget it, I won't bully you with numbers. Why don't we have a bet?" Leng Shichi raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Oh? How and what are we betting?" "Let's bet with our strength. Let's duel. If you win, the weapon will be yours. If you lose, the weapon will still be yours. However, you must join my Yushu clan." "Duel?" Leng Shichi's eyebrows twitched. Leng Shichi didn't expect Yushursi to take the initiative to make such a request. Actually, what he was most worried about was that with so many people swarming him, it would be hard for him to kill his way out even if he had a movement technique. But at the same time, even if he was killed, the Yushu clan would suffer heavy losses. At that time, the other two powers would naturally take advantage of the situation. A duel was indeed a good idea. Sure. Leng Shichi agreed without hesitation. At the same time, his heart was filled with battle intent. He hadn't officially fought with a pure spirit realm expert yet. This time it was a good opportunity for him to test his strength. Straightforward. Yushursi shouted. Without any hesitation, he slashed down with his dagger. Leng Shichi was already prepared for it, but he didn't dodge. Instead, he chose to meet force with force. He executed the Whisking Willow swordsmanship and tangled with Yushursi. Leng Shichi knew that Yushursi's dagger skills were fast and his Whisking Willow swordsmanship was also graceful and nimble. Initially, when he used the Whisking Willow swordsmanship, he was on par with Yushursi. But gradually, Yushursi seemed to have adapted to the rhythm of the Whisking Willow swordsmanship and started to gain the upper hand. When the gang members behind Yushursi saw this, they jumped for joy. Words like "our sect leader is mighty" and "our sect leader is invincible" could be heard. Chapter 31. Leng Shichi, who was in the middle of the battle, was also secretly shocked. Although he had only used the Whisking Willow sword style, his Whisking Willow sword style was at the great perfection stage. Even so, he was still at a disadvantage. It could be seen that Yushursi's strength was not to be underestimated. Yushursi was also shocked. It had only been 10 days since he last saw Leng Shichi, a mere spirit assembly realm cultivator, had already reached the second level of the pure spirit realm. It seems like Delta Orgi gave him quite a lot of spirit fruits. The relationship between the two of them is not ordinary. Yushursi guessed inwardly. However, his attacks were not hindered in the slightest. His blade was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already slashed out a blade shadow that was about to envelop Leng Shichi. However, Leng Shichi's figure moved continuously, and he forced his way out of the saber shadows. Not a single saber hit him. It was the confusion footwork. Immediately after, Leng Shiqi stabbed his sword towards Yu Shixi's throat. Yu Shixi knew that Leng Shiqi had a movement technique and was already prepared. He cleverly blocked the sword with his short blade. Soon after, Leng Shiqi used the confusion footwork to suppress Yu Shixi. However, he discovered that Yu Shixi's blade technique could be used for both offense and defense. It was very exquisite. No wonder he was able to entangle the blood-spotted leopard for so long. Seeing that their gang leader was at a disadvantage, the gang members all shut their mouths. There were even a dozen of them that were slowly closing in on Yu Shixi. At this moment, Yu Shixi suddenly stretched his left hand into his bosom as though he wanted to take out something. When Leng Shiqi saw this, his expression changed. Recalling the 3 arrows that injured the blood-spotted leopard, he retracted his attack and dodged to the side. Haha, I've been tricked. Who would have thought that Yu Shixi's hand was empty? After neutralizing Leng Shiqi's attack, he sent out a palm strike. His palm flashed with traces of golden light, as though it was smeared with a layer of golden powder. With one look, one could tell that it was powerful. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly in his heart. He did not dodge and send out a punch. This punch looked very ordinary and even Yu Shixi did not see any clues. Moreover, they didn't pay much attention to it. Because in his impression, Leng Shiqi shouldn't know any fist techniques. Seeing that the other party didn't use his body movement to find an opportunity, and instead fought head-on, he felt that his chances of winning were higher. Boom. However, at the moment when the fist and palm collided, a soft tiger roar suddenly erupted. Yu Shixi's expression suddenly changed. This was because when Leng Shiqi's seemingly ordinary punch landed on his palm, it suddenly burst forth with an unimaginable power. Yu Shixi was unable to withstand the huge impact and was sent flying. And Leng Shiqi only took 5 steps back. Yu Shixi's palm strike wasn't weak, but he was repelled before he could exert his full strength. Furthermore, Leng Shiqi's body was far stronger than ordinary people due to his long practice of spiritual techniques. Thus, he was able to easily deflect the palm strike. Yu Shixi adjusted his body in midair and did not fall to the ground. He forcefully suppressed the blood that was about to spurt out from his throat and circulated his spirit chi to raise his uncontrollable left arm. He said calmly, "Brother Leng's fist technique isn't bad, but it's a pity that your mastery is a little lacking." When Leng Shiqi saw this, he was slightly stunned. Not only was the Great Perfection Stage Howling Tiger Fist incomparably ferocious, it was also able to restrain the inner strength, achieving a balance of strength and gentleness. This punch landed squarely on Yu Shixi, but why did it seem like Yu Shixi wasn't injured? However, Leng Shiqi immediately noticed that Yu Shixi's left arm was trembling slightly and knew that Yu Shixi was pretending to be calm. Leng Shiqi didn't want to bother about Yu Shixi's thoughts and took the opportunity to charge forward. Yu Shixi gritted his teeth and also charged forward. But when the two of them approached, he whispered, Brother Leng, please calm down. I've lost, I admit defeat. The weapon is yours, but you can't let me lose too miserably. With so many brothers watching, how am I going to convince them in the future?" Hearing this, even Leng Shiqi couldn't wrap his head around it. Isn't there something wrong with Yu Shixi's brain? But thinking about it carefully, Yu Shixi's actions and words today were very reasonable and could even be said to be the best choice. At the same time, Leng Shiqi also felt a little admiration for Yu Shixi. For a person to be able to perfectly fuse face and shamelessness together, it was also a great ability. As expected, those who were able to break through to the pure spirit realm in Blood Fog Island weren't simple. But then again, Leng Shiqi didn't wish to fight to the death with Yu Shixi or the Yushu clan. As long as the other party charged forward, no matter how strong he would still have to suffer a grievance. Thus he immediately made up his mind. However, he still sent out a punch. When Yu Shixi saw that Leng Shiqi didn't know what was good for him, he also sent out a punch. This punch contained almost all of his spiritual energy. But this time, when the punch was just a hair's breadth away, Leng Shiqi's body suddenly flew out. Leng Shiqi fell to the ground in a sorry state with a trace of blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth. He said fiercely, "Damn it, you actually concealed your strength." This time, it was Yu Shixi's turn to be dumbfounded. With his shrewdness, he immediately reacted and praised in his heart, "Brother Leng's acting skills are great." The Jade Tree gang members cheered loudly again, waving their flags and shouting battle cries. Soon after, the two of them were locked in a fierce battle. The shadows of swords and sabers flashed continuously, dazzling the eyes of the spectators. There were a few thrilling exchanges that caused the spectators to feel nervous. But only the two of them knew that it was all a show and they didn't really fight to the death. After a quarter of an hour, Yu Shursi felt that it was about time and gave a signal with his eyes to withdraw from the battle. He kept his saber and cupped his fists. Brother Lung's strength is indeed extraordinary. I admit defeat. Clan leader Yu's saber technique is exquisite and incomparably fast. If the battle continued, I would definitely be the one to lose. I admit defeat. Lung Shichi shook his head. Haha, Brother Lung is too polite. You and I really don't know each other well. How about we call this a draw? I will hand over the weapon with both hands. Take it as making friends with Brother Lung. Yu Shursi said generously. This. Lung Shichi hesitated. Brother Lung, please don't refuse. Otherwise it will hurt our relationship. Alright then, I will accept the weapon. If the Yushu clan has any difficulties in the future, feel free to look for me. Lung Shichi accepted the spiritual sword and said generously. Brother Lung, please don't think that way. I Yushu am not someone who wants favors. There are other cultivation resources nearby that I have to bring my brothers to fight for. Brother Lung, farewell. Farewell. Both parties parted ways. However, not long after Yu Shursi's group left, someone rushed over and whispered to Yu Shursi, Clan leader, I have already lured Bailey Qing's men over. Very good. Hee Brother Lung, a grade 2 spiritual sword isn't that easy to obtain. Yu Shursi smiled proudly. Chapter 32. On the other side, Lung Shichi did not go far and hid behind a withered tree. He carefully took out a piece of talisman paper from his bosom and muttered to himself, in the face of absolute strength, no matter how many tricks you have, they are all useless. The talisman that Lung Shichi took out was the enhancement talisman that he obtained from the lottery. When he placed the enhancement talisman on the sword, the talisman turned into a blue light and entered the sword. Immediately after, the sword began to tremble and flicker with a faint blue light. In less than half an instance's time, the sword returned to normal. Lung Shichi held the sword hilt. With a zeng sound, the sword was unsheathed. The sword was slender and the edge of the sword was faintly flickering with a cold light. There were also a few light blue patterns on the sword with spiritual light constantly moving around. Lung Shichi casually drew a few sword flowers and with a sweep of the sword, the withered tree that he was hiding behind was cut in half. It could be said that he was showing off his ability. Lung Shichi's face revealed a look of surprise. One must know that he did not use any spiritual energy at all. It was the sharpness of the sword that cut the withered tree in half. Good sword. As expected of a third-grade spiritual tool. Lung Shichi could not help but praise. At this moment, a few figures walked over from not far away. There's movement over there, let's go take a look. He seemed to be heading in this direction. Everyone be careful. If it's really Lung Shichi, we just need to delay him. Lung Shichi could not help but frown. After thinking for a moment, he knew that these people were undoubtedly from the 100-Mile Regiment. As for how they knew of his whereabouts, there was no need to think too much. It was definitely related to Yu Shursi. Yu Shursi wanted to use him to clash with the Beilichuan. No matter what the result was, it would be beneficial to Yu Shursi. Bailey Qing Yu Shursi. Lung Shichi whispered. The killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. Immediately Lung Shichi swaggered out. If it was in the past, Lung Shichi would definitely choose to escape, but now he doesn't want to run anymore. Since Bailey Qing dared to chase after him, then he would beat Bailey Qing until he no longer dared to chase after him. When he walked out, he saw 5 people looking around. When they saw Lung Shichi, they recognized him. One of them immediately ran out, presumably to report the news. The remaining 4 did not approach. Instead, they gathered together and stared at Lung Shichi vigilantly. When Lung Shichi took a step forward, they took a step back. Obviously, they didn't want to fight him. This was because the strongest among the 4 of them was only at the 9th level of the spirit-gathering realm. They knew Lung Shichi's strength, so naturally they wouldn't throw their lives away. Then let's see who's faster, you or me. Lung Shichi's spiritual power began to circulate, and he suddenly accelerated. Coupled with his chaotic steps, he rushed over in a few blinks of an eye. Not good. Run, split up and run. The spirit-gathering stage level 9 cultivator turned pale with fright when he saw this and immediately turned to run. One of the 8th level of the spirit-gathering realm reacted half a step slower. Just as he was about to escape, Lung Shichi's sword had already pierced towards him. This sword didn't have any sword technique or sword technique. It was just an ordinary stab, but it made that person feel an unusually sharp pressure. Seeing that he couldn't escape, he could only force himself to put his long sword in front of him, trying to block the sword. Unfortunately, when the sword pierced towards him, his long sword only lasted for a breath's time before it broke in the middle. The sword was unstoppable and directly pierced through his body. The huge gap between his cultivation and his weapon made him unable to retaliate at all before he lost his life on the spot. Then Leng Shiqi caught up to another person and killed him. After that he didn't chase anymore. This was because the other two ran in completely different directions. He couldn't catch up to them and there was no need to chase. Leng Shiqi searched through the items on the corpse at his feet. There was a dagger as a weapon. He sold it to the system along with the 2 long swords he had in reserve before, getting 23 system coins. Only then did he remember that he seemed to have destroyed a weapon just now. What a pity. Then he strolled around casually. Not long after, a large group of people rushed over and surrounded him. Leng Shiqi roughly estimated that there were about 50 to 60 people. Standing at the very front was a well-built young man. It was the leader of the Bilichuan Bailey Qing. Blood 51 followed closely behind. Leng Shiqi, did you kill number 67 Yanjiu and the others? Bailey Qing got straight to the point. That's right. Since he was already exposed, there was no need to hide it. Leng Shiqi readily admitted it. That's good. Bailey Qing said as he stretched out his hand. Blood 51 immediately came forward and handed over a brown spear. Bailey Qing held the spear and his whole body suddenly became like a beast that had locked onto its prey, ready to attack. Leng Shiqi unsheathed his long sword and the spiritual energy in his body quickly circulated. Even the sword in him were sharp. As soon as the two met, they were like fire and water even before they finished speaking. Bailey Qing's heart became more and more dignified at this time because he found that Leng Shiqi's cultivation was actually at the 2nd level of the pure spirit realm, which was higher than his. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. Before the heavenly collapse, a person who could break through to the pure spirit realm with insufficient spiritual energy was definitely not simple. Moreover, the spear in Bailey Qing's hand was also a 2nd-level spirit weapon. Ha! Bailey Qing shouted in a low voice. He raised his spear and rushed over. Leng Shiqi didn't move. Instead he took a defensive posture. Bailey Qing was secretly happy when he saw this. The cultivation methods and spiritual skills he cultivated were mainly fierce. Since his opponent chose to defend from the beginning, then he could only wait for his fierce attack. However, when Bailey Qing rushed halfway, his feet suddenly stopped and he stepped on a piece of mud. He lost his balance and fell forward. At this moment, Leng Shiqi moved. He used the confusing footwork and his long sword carried the willow sword style. After a few moves he arrived in front of Bailey Qing and stabbed down. Captain, be careful. Blood 51 immediately shouted. Then he waved his hand and dozens of people behind him surrounded him. Bailey Qing himself didn't panic in the face of danger. Spiritual energy burst out from under his feet, breaking the mud. He shook his spear and changed from attack to defense, barely blocking the sword. Although he managed to block the attack, he was still at a disadvantage and could only defend himself. Bailey Qing was very depressed. God knew that there would be a small quagmire here. Because of this inconspicuous quagmire, the situation completely changed from what he had imagined. He fell into the passive side of defense. Moreover, Leng Shiqi relied on his movement and swordsmanship and didn't fight him head-on. He was very flexible and changed his direction. The angle of his attacks was more and more tricky, so he couldn't use his spiritual skills. It was very depressing to fight. However, he didn't know that the small quagmire was created by Leng Shiqi using the Hand of Earth. All of this was within his calculations. Chapter 33. During the battle, Leng Shiqi had been suppressing Bailey Qing, which made him feel aggrieved. More importantly, Bailey Qing gradually realized that several sword marks had appeared on his spear. Although these sword marks were not very deep, Leng Shiqi's sword could easily leave sword marks on his 2nd-stage spiritual weapon. What did this mean? It meant that the quality of his sword must be higher than a 2nd-stage spiritual weapon. Could it be a 3rd-stage spiritual weapon? But how is that possible? Bailey Qing was shocked. In the current Blood Mist Island, there were only a handful of 2nd-stage spiritual weapons. Where did this 3rd-stage spiritual weapon come from? Fortunately, Bailey Qing's gang members had already surrounded him. He secretly sighed in relief. At this moment, Leng Shiqi stabbed again. Bailey Qing habitually used his spear to parry, but this time, a huge force suddenly came from the spear. Bailey Qing looked and realized that Leng Shiqi's left hand was holding the spear. His hand was as black as ink, and his inch-long fingernails protruded like a ghost's claw. Leng Shiqi's left hand turned into a ghost jade claw and grabbed the spear, while his right hand held the sword and stabbed straight at Bailey Qing's throat. Bailey Qing turned his arm and the spear began to vibrate rapidly. Lung Shiqi immediately felt waves of pain coming from his left hand. Even though the ghost jade claw was at the perfection stage, it was still shaken until a few cracks appeared. However, Lung Shiqi did not want to let go at all. He still stabbed with his sword. Bailey Qing's expression finally changed. He underestimated the hardness of the ghost jade claw, and also underestimated Lung Shiqi's determination. Puchi. The sword still stabbed Bailey Qing. However, it only stabbed his arm. At the last moment, Bailey Qing could only use his arm as a shield. The sword pierced his arm, but because of the obstruction of flesh and bone, it did not stab Bailey Qing's throat. Captain. Just as Lung Shiqi stabbed Bailey Qing, Sanguine 51 and the others finally arrived. Blood 51 was the first to strike. His two daggers danced through the air in his hands as if he were trying to tear Lung Shiqi to shreds. Lung Shiqi didn't dare to be careless. He was already lucky to be able to injure Bailey Qing in such a short time. He hurriedly retreated. However, there were also several Beilechuan gang members behind him, and they all used their spiritual techniques to attack him. Lung Shiqi could only force his way out of the battle. However, even though he had perfected the enigmatic footwork, he was still left with a knife mark and a fist mark. Fortunately, the injury was not serious. It was only a superficial wound. However, the people who had injured Lung Shiqi just now had tasted the sweetness of victory and thought that pure spirit realm experts were not so invincible, so they excitedly surrounded Lung Shiqi again. A strong killing intent flashed in Lung Shiqi's eyes, and in the next moment he entered a wonderful state. He pointed his long sword, and his figure instantly disappeared in front of their eyes. Lung Shiqi flashed through the group of people like a phantom, and then all 6 of them fell to the ground dead. There was a deep bloody mark on their throats. The chaotic flowers are dazzling the eyes. Killing 6 people with one sword. Seeing that Lung Shiqi had killed 6 people in one move, the originally noisy scene suddenly quieted down. It was so quiet that it was strange. As for the other gang members who were rushing over, they all stopped in their tracks with dull faces. The whole scene looked a little funny. How long had it been since they surrounded and killed Lung Shiqi? Bailey Qing's arm was stabbed in a few rounds, and 6 gang members were killed in one move. These were not 6 pigs, but 6 spirit cultivators above the 7th level of the spirit gathering realm. For a moment, no one dared to come forward. Then everyone looked at Bailey Qing and their meaning was obvious. At this moment, even Bailey Qing was a little shocked. At the same time, he finally understood how number 67 Yanjiu and the others died. Facing such an opponent with such a powerful spiritual technique, it was no wonder that none of them survived. Bailey Qing was very clear that even if it was him, he would have to spend a lot of energy to kill the 6 people just now. After all, if they really couldn't win, they could run separately, and wouldn't foolishly fight with their lives on the line. Looking at Lung Shiqi's calm and composed appearance, this move didn't seem to consume much energy. Bailey Qing was already regretting it in his heart. If the 2 of them fought to the death, he knew that he was inferior to Lung Shiqi, and he didn't have the confidence to dodge that move. Not to mention those spirit gathering realm subordinates, they didn't have the strength to fight back at all. If everyone surrounded and killed him, they might be able to fight to the death, but how many subordinates would he lose? One had to know that the Wushu clan and Jet Black sect were nearby. When the time came, they would definitely hit him while he was down, and his Beilechuan would not be far from being destroyed. If he couldn't win in a one-on-one battle, he might be able to win in a group battle, but the price he would have to pay was too great. What should he do? Captain. His move looked so terrifying, but it must have consumed a lot of spirit energy. Right now, he's just pretending to be calm to intimidate us. Let our brothers attack together, we can definitely kill him. Blood 51 said coldly. When Bailey Qing heard this, he glanced at him in annoyance and said, "Look at his aura and the spirit light on his sword. How does it look like he's running out of spirit energy? Fight. Use the lives of our brothers to fight him to death." Do you think the Wushu clan and Jet Black sect are all dead people? This? Blood 51 was instantly speechless. He lowered his head and didn't dare to say anything else. Bailey Qing's expression became even more gloomy. At this moment, Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry. He was at the 2nd layer of the pure spirit realm, so the chaotic blossom's gradually bewildering eyes only consumed less than 30% of his spirit energy, so it wasn't a lot. Furthermore, because this move was created by him, he was able to use it with ease. Just now, because he was facing a spirit cultivator of the spirit assembly realm, he had used half of his strength and thrust it out 6 times. That was why the 6 of them only had their throats slit and not their heads cut off. This was the benefit of self-created moves. They weren't fixed but could be changed and adjusted at any time. If he had learned a spirit technique created by someone else, he definitely wouldn't have been able to do this. The reason he wasn't in a hurry was because he believed that this move would definitely intimidate Bailey Qing. He wanted to let Bailey Qing know how stupid it was to surround and kill him, Leng Shiqi. In truth, Leng Shiqi didn't have any thoughts of killing Bailey Qing. He wasn't arrogant enough to take the head of an enemy general while surrounded by dozens of people. His goal was to intimidate. With the strength of one person he could intimidate an entire force. Bailey Qing's current situation was somewhat similar to Yu Shixi's. It was difficult to stop halfway. Facing an opponent like Leng Shiqi, it was impossible to fight him alone, and it was also impossible to surround him. However, Leng Shiqi had killed more than 10 of their people. This kind of enmity couldn't be forgotten. Otherwise, who would join his Beilichuan in the future? Difficult. Bailey Qing's heart was in a difficult situation and he was starting to have a headache. At this moment, Leng Shiqi swung his sword, causing the blood on the sword to splatter. Then he pointed his sword and the surrounding Beilichuan hurriedly took 2 steps back. Seeing this scene, Bailey Qing's face darkened. At this moment, Leng Shiqi spoke. Chapter 34. Leng Shiqi was surrounded by dozens of people, but he was not afraid. Instead, he raised his sword and said, "If all of you come at me together, I will definitely die. However, at least half of you will accompany me to the Yellow Springs." "That person, is it you, or is it you?" Leng Shiqi said as he pointed his sword at a person. The people who were pointed at by him all moved away in fear. Moreover, the Yushu clan left not long ago. I heard that the Mahist clan is nearby. What do you think they will do? Leng Shiqi continued. Bailey Qing's face was gloomy, but he could not think of a solution. Roar. Just as he was struggling, several loud roars sounded. Moreover, from the sound it was not far from them. Everyone's expression changed when they heard the sound, because it must be a rank 1 demonic beast that could make such a sound. At this time, a figure hurriedly ran into the crowd. What's going on? Bailey Qing shouted. It's the Mahist clan. They encountered a rank 1 demonic beast and are retreating. The person said while panting. Bailey Qing's face showed a surprised expression, but he was secretly happy. Firstly, the Mahist clan encountered a rank 1 demonic beast and would definitely be injured. Secondly, it gave him a way out. Leng Shiqi, you encountered a rank 1 demonic beast. Today you are lucky. I, Bailey Qing, will take back the debt you owe in the future. Brothers, retreat. Bailey Qing waved his hand and quickly led everyone to retreat. The speed of their retreat was really fast. Bailey Qing, who was retreating, suddenly realized that this Leng Shiqi was so similar to a rank 1 demonic beast. He could not defeat him alone. He could defeat a group of people, but he would suffer heavy casualties. This was simply a demonic beast in human form. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, laughed secretly and ran in another direction. This result was not bad, and it would prevent him from fighting with the Beilichuan. However, he did not run for long before he stopped. Because there was a demonic beast walking slowly in front of him. This demonic beast was shaped like an ape. Its body was not very big, only about the height of a human. Its 2 long forelimbs were covered with ferocious barbs, which made people shudder in fear. When the demonic beast saw Leng Shiqi, its eyes were filled with blood and it rushed over. Leng Shiqi's heart sank. At the same time he felt helpless. It was one thing for 2 first-ranked demonic beasts to appear at the same time today, but he was just casually walking around and bumped into them. His luck was really too bad. Leng Shiqi sighed helplessly. He had no choice but to escape. Speaking of which, if Leng Shiqi used his full strength, he still had a chance to kill this monster, but there was no need to. Even if he could kill this demonic beast, he would still be injured and consume a large amount of spirit chi. One must know that the surrounding area was filled with people from 3 different powers. The Beilichuan was already his mortal enemy, and the Yushu clan also had enmity with him. If he encountered people from these 2 powers in his heavily injured state, Bailey Qing and Yu Shixi would not mind sending him on his way. Even if it was the jet black sect that he had not come into contact with, they would still eliminate this potential threat. He could only run. 1 man and 1 beast ran just like that. Leng Shiqi realized that the demonic beast was not very fast, but it was not slow either. It kept following him closely. In the process they even met a few people, but the demonic beast did not even look at them and just chased after him. Leng Shiqi also did not understand. Was it not good to chase after a spirit-gathering realm cultivator? Why did it have to chase after him, a pure spirit realm cultivator? After chasing for so long it still could not catch up. Could it not be flexible? Of course he did not know what the demonic beast was thinking. He could only run forward. Gradually the terrain began to become unfamiliar. He had already run out of the familiar area and his spirit chi was also gradually depleting. The situation was getting worse. Lung Shiqi's heart was already filled with killing intent. During this period of time he had not met anyone else. This meant that there were very few people in this area. Even if he was injured no one would notice. Da-da-da. The demonic beast's 4 limbs quickly skimmed across the wet ground and continued to chase after Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi checked the spirit chi in his body. Previously he had fought with Yushirsi and Bailey Qing and used chaotic blossom intoxication. Now he only had about 50% of his spirit chi left. Lung Shiqi hardened his heart and took out a pack of spirit-returning powder and swallowed it. His sharp sword was suddenly unsheathed and a cold sword ray streaked across the air. The demonic beast was still chasing after him. Lung Shiqi suddenly turned around and slashed at the demonic beast's left arm. A 3rd-level spirit weapon was abnormally sharp, but even so, the sword only left a deep wound on the demonic beast's left arm. Roar roar roar. The demonic beast was injured and its ferocious forelimbs were crazily waving about. Lung Shiqi dodged and was inwardly shocked. He had used his strongest strength in the previous attack. He originally thought that he could use the sharpness of the 3rd-level spirit weapon to cut off one of the demonic beast's arms. The demonic beast looked ordinary except for its 2 forearms. If he could cut off one of them, his battle strength would be greatly reduced. But he did not expect its arms to be so tough. Next, the man and the demonic beast engaged in an intense battle. The demonic beast's speed was not outstanding, but it was abnormally agile in battle. Especially when it waved its arms, it was impossible to get close to it. Even Roaring Tiger Fist and Ghost Jade Claw could not be used. Lung Shiqi's confusion footwork, which was at the perfection stage, was also not slow. In fact, he was even slightly faster than the demonic beast, but he could only use his sword to attack. The number of sword wounds on the demonic beast's body increased and blood flowed out continuously. But Lung Shiqi was not having a good time either. At this moment, although he was not injured, the spirit chi in his body had been rapidly consumed. If he dragged on, once his spirit chi ran out, he would die without a doubt. Roar! The demonic beast kept roaring and waving its ferocious arms like wheels. There were many wounds on its body but they were not fatal. Instead they made the demonic beast even more ferocious. Ding ding. The demonic beast's arms suddenly smashed down. But this time Lung Shiqi did not dodge. Instead he held his long sword horizontally and blocked the attack. The sword and the demonic beast's arms drew dazzling sparks. At the same time, Lung Shiqi's feet sank deeply into the soil. The barbs on the demonic beast's arms were only an inch away from his face. Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed. He opened his mouth and suddenly let out a horrifying roar. The sound even wrapped in the air, forming an invisible wave of air that spread out. It was the perfection stage sound shockwave. Lung Shiqi had not used the sound shockwave ever since he mastered it. He did not even use it against Yushirsi and Bailey Qing. This was his trump card, a trump card that could win by surprise. Chapter 35. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's unexpected sound wave caused the ape-shaped monster to bleed from its 7 orifices. It even froze in place for a moment. Lung Shiqi hurriedly withdrew and quickly adjusted his spirit energy and aura, entering a strange state. In the next moment, a few afterimages flashed past the ape-shaped monster with a sharp sword light. Then the ape-shaped monster's body fell, and a monster head rolled to the side. Huff huff. Lung Shiqi's body was unstable and he half knelt on the ground, barely supporting himself with the sword in his hand, and began to gasp for breath. At this moment, his spirit energy was almost exhausted, his face was pale, and his entire upper body was already soaked in sweat. However, his eyes still turned and stared at the monster's corpse, and when he found that the monster did not mutate like the blood leopard before it died, he was relieved. However, he did not dare to stay here any longer. The sound wave just now was too loud, and if it attracted other monsters or other spirit cultivators, he would definitely die. Lung Shiqi forced himself up and walked to the monster's side. With a raise of his arm, the monster's corpse disappeared without a trace. Only the bloodstains on the ground seemed to prove that it had existed, and Lung Shiqi's system had an extra 18 system coins. Lung Shiqi looked around and hesitated, because the fog here was already very thick, and he could not find the direction he came from. However, Leng Shiqi was not in a hurry. As long as he slowly found the monster's footprints, he would definitely go back in the opposite direction. Relatively speaking, what he needed more now was to recover his spirit energy. After walking for a while, Leng Shiqi squatted down, pressed his hands on the ground, and used the last trace of spirit energy in his body to use the hand of the earth, and his whole body gradually sank into the ground. Opening up an extremely narrow space underground, Leng Shiqi closed his eyes to recover his spirit energy. After an unknown period of time, Leng Shiqi finally recovered his spirit energy. He exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and found that the spirit energy in his body had faintly increased. However, he didn't go out. Instead, he opened his arms and expanded the underground space a little. It could probably accommodate 2 or 3 people. Then he opened the system and prepared to draw the lottery. Previously, he had obtained a total of 18 system coins from killing the ape-shaped mystical beast. In addition to the remaining 3 points, he had a total of 21 system coins, which was just enough for 2 draws. The reason for this was that the Leng Shiqi urgently needed the ability to face a rank 1 monster head-on. Today he first fought with Yu Shirsi and Bailey Qin, 2 pure spirit realm experts. Although neither side used their full strength in these 2 battles, Leng Shiqi was confident enough to defeat his opponent. If he wanted to kill her, he would probably have to use his sonic shockwave and alluring flowers. He wasn't afraid of fighting with others. No matter if it was the bewildering footwork, willow sword style, ghost jade claw, or howling tiger fist, they were all sharp weapons to defend against enemies. Coupled with a rank 3 spirit artifact, he was absolutely not afraid of ordinary pure spirit realm experts. But on the Blood Fog Island, the threat of demonic beasts might be even greater. Especially demonic beasts with ranks. When dealing with these demonic beasts, there were very few methods that could be used. For example, the ape-shaped mystical beast's arms were full of barbs. When it waved its arms, its speed and power were terrifying. Even if Leng Shiqi had the perfect stage ghost jade claw and howling tiger fist, it was useless. How could a mortal body fight a demonic beast's body head-on? However, the willow sword style was nimble but lacking in power. When combined with the bewildering footwork, it was enough to injure the monster, but it couldn't deal a fatal blow. Alluring flowers was Leng Shiqi's trump card. It consumed a lot of spirit energy, so naturally he couldn't use it casually. Therefore, when dealing with demonic beasts, Leng Shiqi didn't have it that easy. He realized that he currently lacked powerful spiritual techniques that could be used head-on. The resource eruption had just passed, so he could only place his hopes on the system. Of course, this hope wasn't very big. He opened the system and selected the elementary lottery. Begin. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the elementary prize. Card, Magic Crow. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the elementary prize, a pair of cloth shoes. Looking at the 2 extra items in front of him, Leng Shiqi directly picked up the card. He still remembered that the lightning arrow he drew last time saved his life, and because of it he obtained the spirit fruit to break through to the pure spirit stage. It could be said that the lightning arrow card was the key to him having enough strength to deter a force. This card was definitely a good thing. Picking up the card, there was a purple crow drawn on the front. Its claws were abnormally sharp and its eyes were fierce. It looked ferocious at first glance. There was also a description on the side: summon the magic crow for you to command until death. This summon a life form. This system is getting more and more incredible. Let's give it a try. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, then injected spirit energy. The card suddenly turned into a golden light, and then the golden light dissipated, and a purple crow the size of a head flew out. However, this place was very small, and the crow couldn't fly anywhere. Leng Shiqi waved his hand, and the crow obediently landed on his arm. Leng Shiqi carefully observed the crow and found that its appearance was the same as in the painting just now, but at this time the crow's eyes were lifeless, and it didn't seem to be a living creature. He found that there was a connection between him and the crow, and he could command it at any time, but it didn't have its own independent thought. It was a bit like a robot only knowing to follow orders. So that's how it is. Leng Shiqi nodded. This situation made Leng Shiqi feel a little relieved. If he really summoned a living creature, he really didn't dare to use it at ease. And feeling the aura emitted by the crow, it was a genuine rank 1 monster. Leng Shiqi was very satisfied with having such a powerful combat force at his disposal. It's just that I still need to find an opportunity to test the crow's specific combat power. I can't always call you a crow, you'll be called Ziyu. Leng Shiqi gently patted Ziyu's head, and with a shake of his arm, Ziyu landed on his shoulder. At this time, Lung Shichi's gaze fell on another prize, a pair of cloth shoes. Forget it, it's better than nothing, at least it can be used. Lung Shichi kicked off the shoes he made with leaves and weeds, and put on the cloth shoes, feeling that they fit his feet quite well. All in all, Lung Shichi was still very satisfied with this lottery draw. With an additional powerful combat power, he would have a stronger foundation to stand on. The hope of surviving on this blood fog island increased by a bit. Just as Lung Shichi was about to go back, he suddenly felt a very slight vibration. It was so slight that it could be ignored, and at first he even thought it was an illusion. But then there was another vibration. Lung Shichi subconsciously raised his head. He guessed that there might be a large monster moving on the ground nearby. However, after a few more vibrations, Lung Shichi was surprised to find that the source of the vibrations didn't come from the ground. Instead, it came from underground. In fact, the vibrations were even more frequent. Chapter 36. Sensing the unusual movement, Lung Shichi narrowed his eyes and his eyes flashed. Finally, he pressed his hands against the air, and his whole body began to sink. Judging from the appearance of the spirit fruit last time, there were still some natural treasures on this blood fog island. The phenomenon at this moment might also be the birth of a rare treasure. Now that his spiritual power had been restored and he had the purple feather, it was worth exploring. His body continued to sink underground and his vision was pitch black. Lung Shichi was also constantly adjusting his direction. Now he felt that the vibration was getting stronger and stronger. Moreover, he could vaguely hear the sound of roaring. After about half an hour, the frequency of the vibration decreased, but the roaring sound became more and more frequent. As the depth continued to increase, Lung Shichi could hear it more clearly. It seemed to be the sound of a demonic beast, but this sound was full of fear and pain. Further down, the roaring sound turned into a wail. Suddenly, Lung Shichi stopped. Through the feedback of the soil, he would fall down a little bit more. This meant that there was still a space underground. At this time, it was almost as if they were separated by a wall. The sound below could be heard very clearly. It was indeed the sound of a demonic beast wailing. However, what could make a demonic beast so frightened? Just as Lung Shichi was feeling bewildered, he vaguely heard the sound of a conversation. Someone's here? Lung Shichi immediately held his breath and carefully poked a finger-sized hole with the hand of earth. Then he could hear the voice more clearly. Zhualaogue, can you be a little quieter? The surrounding formation is damaged and I have to waste time repairing it. A voice full of energy and exasperation sounded. Oh, Meng Wanshan, you've come at the right time. Take a look at this old man's new masterpiece. It was a dry and hoarse voice. You've been working for several days and this is what you've come up with? It's neither a demonic beast nor a ghost. What do you know? This is a blood beast formed by the fusion of two demonic beasts. There are not many people in the blood beast sect who can make such a thing. Is that so? Then it would be a great loss for the blood beast sect to lose a grandmaster like you. What a laughable bunch of stubborn people. They're still holding on to ancient books from hundreds of years ago and don't know how to be flexible at all. If this continues, how many generations can the blood beast sect continue to be passed down? Haha, a traitor like you who has already been expelled from the blood beast sect is still worried about the future of the sect. Did you come here just to mock this old man? The voice suddenly turned cold. Zhualaogue, you and I are already dead. Now that we are under the control of others, we can be considered as grasshoppers on the same rope. I don't want to be your enemy. But you'd better restrain yourself. You can torment your blood fiends, but don't make me deal with your tail. Bah no. Even if I broke a few corners of the formation, why are you so stingy? It won't take much time to repair the formation, but do you know that what they want the most right now is stability? Although the unforeseen event some time ago was expected, the losses caused were still too great. It's not like you don't know how many people died because of this. I don't want to attract their attention because of the commotion you caused in the area I'm in charge of. Do you understand? In the end, you're still afraid of death. Don't worry, if my blood fiends succeed, it will definitely be a great merit. At that time, our area will be basking in my glory. Is that so? What do you mean by your blood fiends? Forget it, I'm in a good mood today, so there's no harm in telling you. When the blood fiend's condition stabilizes, I'll let them fuse with the blood malicious bead. Don't worry, the fusion of the blood malicious bead is very smooth now, and it won't go berserk anymore. The space within Blood Fog Island is too unstable to accommodate the life forms of rank 3 demonic beasts. I'll combine 2 rank 2 demonic beasts and refine them into twin blood fiends. After fusing with the blood malicious bead, their combat power will definitely be stronger than that of a rank 3 demonic beast. However, its life form is still a rank 2 demonic beast. This will solve a very troublesome problem for them in the future. Don't you think it's a great merit? Wonderful. Wonderful. Zhualaogue, you're really something. Perhaps the Blood Beast sect really made the wrong decision to expel you back then. That's because their conversation came to an abrupt end. In the next instant, an astonishingly huge aura surged out along with a shocking roar. What was even more frightening was that 2 even more frightening spiritual energy fluctuations immediately followed. After only a few breaths of time, the outside calmed down again. Didn't you just say that it won't go berserk anymore? This voice was filled with irritable anger. Cough cough, I just said that fusing with the blood malicious bead won't go berserk anymore, but I didn't say that fusing with the twin blood fiends wouldn't. I'm going to repair the formation first. I can't be bothered to waste my breath with you. You'd better hope that they don't notice this place. Otherwise, just the negligence alone is enough for you and me to die several times over. Then there was a series of hurried footsteps. Tisk, it's hard for someone as timid as a mouse to accomplish great things. What exactly went wrong this time? Think again, think again. After a long while, there was no more sound. Lung Shichi finally dared to relax. Only then did he realize that his whole body was already soaked in sweat. The conversation between the two of them contained too much shocking information. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. For a moment, even Lung Shichi felt his head buzzing and his head hurt. After a long while, Lung Shichi wiped the sweat from his face and muttered to himself, "It seems that my previous guess was correct. There really is someone secretly controlling Blood Mist Island. And we're just pawns to be manipulated." Lung Shichi's eyes flickered. It was an opportunity for him to come here by accident, and he didn't want to go back like this. Immediately, Lung Shichi used the Hand of Earth to open a hole as thick as an arm, and then immediately sealed it. A purple crow flew out of the sky. Lung Shichi sent Ziyu out to investigate while he continued to hide. Although Ziyu didn't have a true consciousness, Lung Shichi ordered him to return immediately if he found any living creatures. If there wasn't any, he would fly back in 30 minutes. Lung Shichi digested the shocking information while counting the time. After the time for an entire incense stick to burn, Ziyu returned. He took a deep breath, adjusted his state, and then opened the hole and jumped down. Suddenly, a strong smell of blood hit his face. Lung Shichi used his spiritual power to control his legs, and when he landed, he didn't make a sound. After landing, he immediately looked around and found that there was no one else. This place wasn't very big and there were colorful formations and restrictions everywhere. Waves of strong spiritual power were constantly emitted, and there were several passages that were as tall as a person that led to unknown places. Then his eyes fell on a large piece of flesh not far away. It was the twin blood fiend that Zhualaogue said had suddenly gone berserk. Chapter 37. Lung Shichi endured the nauseating smell and quickly ran over. When he got closer, he saw that there were 2 terrifying wounds on the demonic beast's body. One was at the heart. It was unknown what had pierced through the heart, but the wound was as thick as a pillar. The other was at the head. At this time, the demonic beast's head was already a mess. It looked like it had been cut by countless sharp blades. Seeing this, Lung Shichi thought of the 2 shocking fluctuations of spirit energy. He didn't know how strong the 2 people who had just spoken and attacked were. However, Lung Shichi didn't care about this. He waved his hand and a line of translucent words appeared in front of him. The price is 106 system coins. Do you want to sell? Yes. Lung Shichi's face couldn't help but show a touch of joy. The value of this demonic beast's body was far beyond his expectations. Then the large piece of flesh disappeared without a trace. Lung Shichi planned to leave at this time. To be able to pick up such a big bargain was already a big profit. However, when he saw the narrow passages around him, he had other thoughts. If you don't go crazy, you won't survive. Lung Shichi made up his mind and walked into the nearest passage. The passage was very narrow, but it wasn't dark. Lung Shichi walked for a long time and didn't find any danger. Instead, he found a room. With a wave of his arm, Ziyu, who had been standing on Lung Shichi's shoulder, immediately flapped its wings and flew into the room. He leaned against the wall, and the hand of the earth was always ready. If there was any movement, it would immediately merge with the wall. After a few seconds, Ziyu flew back. Lung Shichi knew that there was no one inside, so he quickly went into the room. As soon as he entered the room, he saw a mess. The room wasn't big. It was filled with several tall bookshelves. There were many books, scrolls and the like, but they were all messed up. In the middle of the room there was a desk half the height of a person. On top of it was a mess of scrolls. Lung Shiqi hurriedly stepped forward and went directly to the desk. He didn't dare to flip through the books. Looking carefully, he found that these books were just ordinary books that recorded some information, and they were basically related to demon beasts. As he looked around, Lung Shiqi's body suddenly froze. Because a message suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Rank 3 skill discovered. Beast Demon Destruction Technique, incomplete. Do you wish to learn it? 2 skill points will be consumed. 3rd stage cultivation technique. Lung Shiqi was pleasantly surprised. He lowered his head to take a look. He didn't know which book was the cultivation technique, but he didn't dare to touch it carelessly. He could only choose, yes. In the next moment, Lung Shiqi's consciousness was pulled into the gray space. Lung Shiqi had been in the gray space many times, but he had always come in to cultivate spiritual techniques. This time he was cultivating techniques. That's not right. I didn't enter the gray space when I was practicing the mountain-shattering force. Why was I pulled in this time? Is it because the system has been upgraded? Lung Shiqi suddenly felt that something was wrong, but he didn't have time to think about it. His body had already moved on its own. Lung Shiqi hurriedly collected his thoughts and went to experience the cultivation technique. When Lung Shiqi reached the beginner level of the Beast Demon Destruction Technique, his consciousness was thrown out. The moment his consciousness returned to his body, Lung Shiqi suddenly felt an extremely dangerous feeling, which made his back turn cold. Lung Shiqi didn't even look back. He used the confusion steps and moved half a foot away. Just as he was about to teleport away, a slender red snake pounced on him. Rank 1 Demon Beast. Lung Shiqi was already sweating at this moment. He thought to himself, that was close. If he was a moment later, he would have been ambushed. If he was ambushed by a rank 1 demon beast, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. When the red snake's attack failed, it immediately arched its body like a bow, ready to shoot a fatal arrow at any time. Lung Shiqi didn't want to fight the red snake here. Although he had the help of the rank 1 demon beast, Ziyu, it was too dangerous here. If he attracted the attention of the room's owner, even 10 of him wouldn't be enough to kill him. Whoosh! He unsheathed the rank 3 spiritual sword. The red snake seemed to feel the threat of the spiritual sword, and its body leaned back a little. Next, Lung Shiqi swung his hand and 5 silver needles shot out. The red snake seemed to be intelligent and nimbly dodged them. Taking this opportunity, Lung Shiqi ran away. A rank 3 technique and more than 100 system coins. It could be said that he had made a lot of money this time. Naturally, it was best to run now. As soon as he left the room, Lung Shiqi wanted to go back the way he came, but he didn't expect to hear footsteps coming from that direction. Lung Shiqi had no choice but to run in the opposite direction. At the same time, he channeled spiritual power into his feet and didn't dare to make any sound. Behind him, the little red snake followed him like a shadow, constantly making hissing sounds. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi was not slow, and the red snake couldn't catch up for a while. Lung Shiqi ran as fast as he could and kept looking up. But the more he looked, the colder his heart became. This was because the top of the passage was covered with formations and restrictions. Although he didn't know what these formations were, he couldn't run into them head-on, and there was no way for him to return to the surface. What was even more frightening was that Lung Shiqi realized that he was almost at the end of the passage. This was a dead end. Lung Shiqi's mind buzzed and he was a little confused. He immediately shook his head, forced himself to calm down and looked up. Got it? Suddenly, Lung Shiqi realized that there was an area above where there were no formations. Although it was only a small area, it was enough to accommodate him. There was a light at the end of the tunnel. Lung Shiqi didn't dare to delay. He bent his legs and then jumped up. Like a fish jumping into a pool, he disappeared into the wall above. The red snake also stopped. It witnessed everything, but it didn't seem to understand and could only circle around anxiously. On the other side, at the entrance of the passage, there was an old man who didn't have much hair on his head, but he still had a messy hairstyle. He slowly walked over and muttered something. Little red flower, you're being naughty again. How many times have I told you not to touch my book? When he walked into the room, his originally turbid eyes suddenly flashed with a sharp gaze, and his entire aura also underwent an earth-shattering change in an instant. The spiritual power around him swirled, and there was even a blood-red light. He stretched out his hand and 5 needles flew over and he caught them with 2 fingers. They were the 5 silver needles that Lung Shiqi shot out before. Someone's here. The old man's eyes widened slightly, and he immediately went to the table. He pulled out an old book with sketches on it, and secretly sighed in relief. Meng Wanshan is a piece of trash. He calls himself a formation master, but he didn't even know that someone had come in. Fortunately, this old man's 10 years of hard work is still here, or else I would have fought you to the death. After the old man finished speaking, he took out something that looked like a waste token, and with a surge of spiritual power, the waste token exploded. Then the whole area shone brightly, and all the formations and restrictions were activated. Chapter 38. Ever since Lung Shiqi drilled into the ground, he used the hand of earth with all his strength to continue rising. He estimated that he would be able to return to the surface in about half an hour. However, at this moment, Lung Shiqi suddenly felt that the surrounding soil was rapidly hardening. The speed of his ascent suddenly slowed down, and the soil's hardness became higher and higher. At the same time, several formations and restrictions of different colors suddenly appeared. The closest one was 2 inches in front of Lung Shiqi. A terrifying aura rushed towards him, causing him to hold his breath. The sudden change caught Lung Shiqi a little off guard. The Hand of Earth's magical effect had always been the reason he dared to explore, but at this moment, the Hand of Earth could not help him. Because there were already formations around him, and the spiritual power fluctuations were all terrifying. He believed that he would definitely die if he touched them. At this moment, Lung Shiqi forced himself to calm down and carefully looked for a way to escape. The surrounding soil had become very hard. He could not melt it even with the Hand of Earth's full strength. In other words, he was trapped here. Fortunately, although the formations were terrifying, they did not show any signs of expanding. Lung Shiqi sighed and felt relieved. At least for now, as long as he did not move, his life was not in danger. After thinking for a while, Lung Shiqi really could not think of a way. He simply sat down and called out the system interface. Lung Shiqi could only count on the system lottery now. Looking at the 107 system coins in the system, he could even draw 10 times in a row. Maybe he could really get something that could solve his current predicament. Beginner lottery 10 times begin. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Broken Emerald, Embedding Material. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Mission Card, Randomly accept beginner missions. Different levels of rewards will be given according to the degree of completion. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Jade Hairpin. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Smoke Stone. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Colored Glass Cup. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Special Bone Flute. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Poison Heart-Destroying Pill. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner prize, Long Beard Vine Refining Material. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the elementary prize, Dark Gold Mask. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the primary prize, Chakra Walk. Looking at these prizes, Lung Shiqi's eyes twitched. There were very few practical things, and more importantly, none of them could help him get out of his current predicament. Although Lung Shiqi didn't have much hope in his heart before, he couldn't help but sigh at this moment. He then began to count the prizes one by one. Lung Shiqi piled the most useless ones together. The Broken Emerald and the Long Beard Vine were both materials for refining weapons, but no one on the Blood Fog Island knew how to refine weapons, so these 2 items were the most useless. The Broken Emerald was a little better as it could be carried around, but the Long Beard Vine could only be thrown away. He picked up the Special Bone Flute and played with it for a while, then threw it aside. Was he going to play a song for the enemy if he kept it? The Lapis Lazuli was a delicate lamp. Lung Shiqi thought about it and threw it away. No matter how delicate it was, it couldn't be carried around, and the system backpack was very tight. Naturally, he couldn't carry such useless things. Then Lung Shiqi picked up the black gold mask and looked at it first. This mask didn't cover the whole face, but the mouth was exposed. It didn't look special. Lung Shiqi put the mask on his face. It felt good to the touch, so he didn't take it off. The jade hairpin was a very common emerald green hairpin. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment and put it in his arms. Then Lung Shiqi's face became more dignified. He picked up a palm-sized white card with the words Mission Card written on it. After thinking for a while, he put the card in the system backpack. Naturally, this mission couldn't be started right now. If the mission had a time limit or something, it would be terrible. This was a good thing and he had to keep it safe. The smoke stone was a gray stone. Smashing it would release a large amount of smoke in an instant. It was similar to the smoke bombs in his previous life. It was a treasure for escaping. Putting the smoke stone in his waist, Lung Shiqi picked up a dark green bottle with the words "heart-wrecking pill" engraved on it. When he opened the cap, he immediately smelled an unbearable stench. Lung Shiqi immediately covered his mouth and nose and thought to himself, "This poison doesn't even need to take effect to kill people directly." Then he turned the bottle upside down and 2 pills, one black and one white, slipped out. The black pill was the heart-wrecking pill. After taking it, the heart would beat violently every once in a while, and every time, it would beat more and more violently until the heart exploded and died. The white pill was the antidote to the heart-wrecking pill. Staring at the 2 pills, Lung Shiqi nodded slightly. This thing was a good way to threaten and control people. Finally, Lung Shiqi's eyes fell on the chakra walk. This prize was not something like a book, but a small light blue energy body. When Lung Shiqi's hand touched it, the energy body turned into a blue light and drilled into his eyebrows, and then a prompt appeared in front of his eyes. Boom. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a special spiritual technique, Chakra Walk, entry level plus. Huh? Entry level? Lung Shiqi couldn't help but wonder. In the past, when he obtained spiritual techniques, he went to the gray space, but this time he didn't. What's even more strange is that Lung Shiqi didn't feel any change in himself at all. What's going on? Lung Shiqi frowned and began to recall the information about Chakra Walk. This spiritual technique is obviously from a famous anime world in his previous life. Chakra Walk, to be precise, is not a ninjutsu or spiritual technique. It is actually a fine control of the energy in one's body. The stronger the control, the faster the learning and the smoother the use. In this world, it is essentially the control of spiritual power. Lung Shiqi's cultivation is now at the 2nd level of the pure spirit realm. The pure spirit realm is the process of polishing spiritual power, and the control of spiritual power has gradually improved in the process of cultivation. In fact, Lung Shiqi's spiritual power control system has basically reached the entry level of Chakra Walk, so he didn't feel any change. Immediately, Lung Shiqi directly opened the system and clicked the plus sign behind Chakra Walk. Entry, proficiency, small success, Deshang, great perfection. When Chakra Walk was promoted to the great perfection realm, Lung Shiqi could clearly feel that the spiritual power in his body was more flexible and delicate. He raised his palm and moved his spiritual power, and a faint aura suddenly appeared in his palm. Then the aura began to change, first gradually forming a circle, then a triangle, a pentagon, and other shapes. But more complex shapes can't be done, but Lung Shiqi nodded with satisfaction. Chapter 39. Lung Shiqi was quite satisfied with this chakra walking technique. In addition to accumulating spiritual power, the pure spirit realm also requires continuous polishing of spiritual power. Now that his control of spiritual power has greatly improved, the polishing of spiritual power is also more efficient. Apart from that, the usage of all spiritual techniques would become even more exquisite. This small chakra walking technique has unknowingly increased the speed and strength of Lung Shiqi's cultivation. However, it is still useless in the current predicament. Lung Shiqi sighed faintly. Forget it, since I can't get out for the time being, I'll just wait. The materials stored in the system backpack are enough to support me for 2 or 3 months. This place is full of formations and restrictions and it looks dangerous. But at the same time, it is also full of rich spiritual energy, even richer than the spiritual energy on the ground. It is better to use this place to cultivate for a while. Then Lung Shiqi gathered his thoughts and prepared to cultivate the new technique, Beast Demon Destruction Technique. To be able to cultivate in such a dangerous place, Lung Shiqi's heart was really big. But not long after, Lung Shiqi opened his eyes again, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Because he found that although he cultivated Beast Demon Destruction Technique, the previous technique, Mountain Breaking Energy, was also there. This was different from what he knew. In his memory, if he cultivated a new cultivation method, he would have to change his previous cultivation method. However, at this moment, the 2 techniques coexisted in Lung Shiqi's body. The biggest advantage of this is that the cultivation speed will be faster, and the characteristics of the 2 techniques will be combined. As for Lung Shiqi's first cultivation technique, Spirit Energy Art, to put it nicely, it is called a technique, but to put it bluntly, it is actually a method to draw spiritual energy into the body. It is not a technique at all. Maybe it is because of the existence of the system, but it is a good thing. Lung Shiqi murmured, and then entered the state of cultivation. This cultivation session lasted for almost a month. In the underground space, Meng Wanshan, who was in charge of setting up and maintaining the formation, was currently kneeling behind a figure. The man wore a blood-red robe with lifelike evil face ghosts embroidered on his collar and cuffs. He was holding a scroll and silently flipping through it. Meng Wanshan had been kneeling for a long time. His entire back was soaked in sweat, but he didn't dare to move. After a long time, the man put down the file in his hand. The file fell to the ground with a soft sound. However, this tiny sound was like a sudden clap of thunder to Meng Wanshan, causing him to shudder. "Meng Wanshan, you are very good," that person said indifferently. There was not a trace of emotion in his tone. However, Meng Wanshan felt an almost tangible spiritual pressure pressing down on him like a mountain. "Everything your subordinate has done is for the safety of the Blood Mist Island. Lord Hualuiwe is wise." Meng Wanshan seemed to have used up all his strength to finish this sentence. After saying it, he looked even more exhausted. "Enlightened? This is the enlightened one." Hualuiwe turned around and revealed a mask. On it was a picture of flowers blooming under the moonlight. He walked past Meng Wanshan and patted him on the shoulder before leaving. At first, Meng Wanshan was very puzzled. He found it hard to believe that the other party had let him go so easily. Who would have thought that in the next moment, his body would gradually melt like a pile of mud? Meng Wanshan couldn't even scream because he no longer had a mouth. He only had a terrified expression as he finally turned into a pile of mud. Hualuiwe walked out of the room. There were 5 people waiting at the door with their backs slightly bent. Zhualaogui was among them. When they saw him come out, the 5 immediately knelt down and shouted, "Lord Hualuiwe, close the formation. There will be no next time." Hualuiwe left behind a sentence and disappeared in a flash. The remaining few people remained kneeling on the ground, not daring to move. After a long time, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. They stood up and wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads. Another life saved. "Tisk, you're already dead. Why are you still so afraid of death?" "Enough. Close the formation. You still have the time to bicker." "But what about the person who broke in?" "Idiot. We've activated so many formations this time. We haven't found the person who broke in for more than a month. Do you know how much resources we've lost? Besides, to the big shots above, we don't have to care too much about this little rat. Disperse." The 5 of them dispersed. From the beginning to the end, no one mentioned Meng Wanshan. On the other side, Lung Shiqi was still cultivating day after day. In the first few days, he would often stop to check if there were any changes to the formations and restrictions. Later, he simply couldn't be bothered. Other than eating, he focused all his attention on cultivating. In a situation where he was surrounded by formations and restrictions, he still took the opportunity to absorb a large amount of spiritual energy to cultivate. Lung Shiqi's method was crazy. Until one day, Lung Shiqi, who was immersed in cultivation, noticed that the originally abundant spiritual energy had suddenly become thin. Lung Shiqi opened his eyes and saw that the restrictions around him were gradually dimming. After a few breaths, they disappeared without a trace. He raised his hands and felt that the earth was rapidly softening. He made a prompt decision. His spiritual energy at the peak of the 3rd level of the pure spirit realm burst forth, and he used the hand of earth to quickly rush upwards. Blood Mist Island, Stone Forest. 2 youths at the 8th level of the spirit gathering realm were wandering around in boredom. "Feng Qi, what's the point of patrolling here? Who doesn't know that this area is our Supreme Society's territory? Who would dare to barge in?" One of the short-haired youths said with a slightly arrogant tone, picking his teeth with his little finger. "Be content, Mu-21. At least there's no danger patrolling here. It's better than having us gather resources. It's not like you don't know that of the 10 people who went to the mountain last time, only 5 came back." The person beside him continued. "Tisk, they're just unlucky to run into people from the Blood Moon. Alright, let's not talk about it. I'm going to relieve myself." Mu-21 turned behind a strange rock nearby, took off his pants and was about to go to the toilet. All of a sudden, bang! A loud sound rang out. The ground in front of Mu-21 burst open, lifting up a large amount of soil and throwing it at him. A black shadow shot up into the sky from the middle. Mu-21's eyes were a little dazed as he stared blankly at the black shadow making a beautiful turn in midair, and then slowly landing on the ground. That person was draped in a shabby black robe, and wore a dark golden mask on his face. There was even a ferocious crow perched on his shoulder. He looked like an evil spirit that had crawled out from the depths of hell. Oh. Mu-21 couldn't help but shudder, and a foul stench instantly flowed out from below. Lung Shiqi really didn't notice that there was someone here when he rushed out with all his might, because most of Mu-21's body was covered in soil. When Lung Shiqi landed on the ground, he smelled an indescribable stench, but before he could look around he heard a loud shout. "Who's there?" Such a loud commotion naturally attracted Feng Qi's attention, and he immediately shouted. Chapter 40. Feng 7 looked at the mysterious masked man in front of him and felt that he was not someone to be trifled with. More importantly, he could not sense his cultivation level at all, so he must be in the pure spirit realm. Feng 7 first saluted with his fists, but said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Who are you? Why did you suddenly appear in the Supreme Society's territory?" He even purposely emphasized the words, Supreme Assembly. Supreme Society? Lung Shiqi's eyes were slightly doubtful, then he looked around and found that this place was a stone forest. But because of the corrosive rain, these stones were all bumpy and looked a little strange and scary. He had never been to this place before, in other words, this was no longer the area he was originally in. Feng 7 saw that Lung Shiqi was ignoring him, so he immediately asked, "This is..." Boom! But Lung Shiqi did not give him a chance to speak at all. He took a few steps and flashed to Feng 7's side, instantly grabbing Feng 7's neck. Feng 7's momentum did not decrease, and he directly crashed into a strange stone behind him. A cough. Feng 7 almost couldn't breathe, he only felt extreme pain all over his body, his whole back felt like it was falling apart, and he could not help but cough out a mouthful of blood. "I ask you answer, you can live, understand?" Lung Shiqi's cold voice rang in Feng 7's ears. Feng 7 could not move his body, he could only frantically blink his eyes, showing an extremely strong desire to live. Since the catastrophe, how many times have the cultivation resources erupted? 4 times. Lung Shiqi was stunned, he had lost track of time after being underground for so long, he did not expect that more than 30 days had passed. "I actually missed 3 chances to fight for resources." Lung Shiqi secretly lamented. "Have you heard of the Yushu clan, Belichuan and Jet Black sect?" He continued to ask. "Oh. How many forces are there in this area, and how strong are they?" "There are only 2 forces in this area, our Supreme Society and Blood Moon. Our president is at the 3rd level of the Pure Spirit Realm, and there are 2 other spirit cultivators at the Pure Spirit Realm. As for Blood Moon, they also have 3 Pure Spirit Realm cultivators, but their leader is at the 4th level of the Pure Spirit Realm, so they have always been suppressing us." Hearing these words, Lung Shiqi felt a sense of urgency in his heart. Only a little more than a month had passed, and Pure Spirit Realm experts had appeared one after another. Not to mention this, the most surprising thing was that someone had actually broken through to the 4th layer of the Pure Spirit Realm. Others might not be very clear about the difficulty of breaking through from the 3rd level of the Pure Spirit Realm to the 4th level, but Lung Shiqi was very clear about it. In fact, about 10 days ago, Lung Shiqi was already at the peak of the 3rd level of Pure Spirit Realm, but even after cultivating for 10 days under the condition of abundant spiritual qi, he was still unable to break through to the 4th level. Every major realm of cultivation had 9 minor realms, and every 3 minor realms was a barrier. In the first 3 levels of the Pure Spirit Realm, in addition to accumulating spiritual qi, one also had to constantly polish spiritual qi to make it purer. But in Blood Mist Island, the pressure was really great, and even if Lung Shiqi cultivated spiritual qi with all his might, he did not refine it very carefully. If he wanted to break through the barrier of the 4th level, he had to have enough spiritual qi. So during this period of time, Lung Shiqi had been polishing spiritual qi, but he estimated that he would have to continue cultivating for 8 or 9 days before he could break through. At this time, Feng Qi, whose neck was still firmly held by a hand, saw that the other seemed to be lost in thought, and his mind immediately became active. Of course, it was not the thought of courting death. The gap in strength was there, and he was still very self-aware. He connected the questions that Lung Shiqi asked, and guessed that this person was most likely not active in this area, and Lung Shiqi was obviously an expert of the Pure Spirit Realm. If he could pull him into the Supreme Union, wouldn't it be enough to suppress Blood Moon? That would naturally be a great merit for him. "Cough this, brother, sir. I think you should join the Supreme Union. Our president will definitely invite you with a lot of money, martial arts, spiritual skills, weapons, you can choose." Feng Qi said, but found that the other party did not seem to be interested. Instead, his eyes revealed a bit of cold killing intent, which made Feng Qi subconsciously shut his mouth. Leng Shiqi was definitely not willing to join a force. Next, he just wanted to steadily break through to the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, and then see if he could find his original place. After all, he spent a lot of effort on that cave and it was indeed very safe. It would be very difficult to find such a place to stay. As for the two people in front of him, Leng Shiqi did have some killing intent, but after thinking about it, it seemed that there was no need. First of all, there was no conflict between them, and rashly killing them would implicate the Supreme Union's hatred. Moreover, with the increase of his cultivation, a cultivator at the 8th level of the spirit-gathering realm could be killed with a flip of his hand, and there was indeed no threat. Finally, Leng Shiqi was not a bloodthirsty person. Big brother, you can really consider joining the Supreme Union? When the time comes, we can catch Blood Moon off guard, kill the Delta Origi and occupy the Stone Forest. Feng Qi clearly felt that Leng Shiqi's killing intent was slowly dissipating, and he continued to persuade Leng Shiqi. When Leng Shiqi heard the two words Delta Origi, a strange look flashed across his eyes and he coldly shouted, "What did you just say?" "What did I say?" Feng Qi did not immediately react. "I mean, you've convinced me." Half an hour later, Leng Shiqi and the other two arrived at the Supreme Union's location. It was still the Stone Forest, but the stones formed a circle, and the stones were connected by branches, forming a small camp. There were more than a dozen simple tents of different sizes in the camp, and many figures could be seen walking back and forth, roughly 70 to 80 people. The three of them walked to the gate, and when the gatekeeper saw Leng Shiqi, a stranger, he immediately stepped forward to stop them. Feng Qi hurriedly went forward and whispered, and the few of them even glanced at Leng Shiqi from time to time. "Let's report to the president, it's too dangerous to let a pure spirit realm cultivator in." "All right." Then one of them quickly ran in and rushed straight to the largest tent in the center of the camp. Feng Qi came back with a smile and wanted to explain to Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi did not care, and instead glanced at Mu 21 who had been hanging at the back. At this time his gaze was a little dull, and his body was still covered in mud, and when he got closer he could faintly smell a strange smell. Shaking his head, Leng Shiqi did not care about him anymore. At this time a few people hurriedly walked over, and the leader was a 13 or 14-year-old youth, with a hypocritical smile on his face. This person was the president of the Supreme Union, GE, who later created a force and changed his name to Ji Tianyi. Ji Tianyi walked out of the gate, and the first thing he sensed was Leng Shiqi's aura. Pure Spirit Realm Level 3. Ji Tianyi was delighted and smiled. "This one is the president of the Supreme Union, Ji Tianyi. How should I address you, brother?" "Dark Crow," Leng Shiqi said lightly. Chapter 41. Ji Tianyi saw that the other party was wearing a black robe and a mask, with a purple crow perched on his shoulder. "So it's Brother Dark Crow. I've heard from my brothers that Brother Dark Crow intends to join our Supreme Society. If that's true, this one welcomes you with open arms. However, Brother Dark Crow's position in the society will depend on how capable you are." Ji Tianyi's body surged with battle intent. Leng Shiqi heard this but did not say anything. He reached out his right hand, palm up, and made a hooking motion. The smile on Ji Tianyi's face disappeared and he clenched his fists. With a roar, he rushed forward, his fist seemingly tearing through the air. Wave-breaking fist. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi also punched out, but his fist looked ordinary. Seeing this, the members of the Supreme Union behind him began to buzz in discussion. "Who do you think will win?" "Nonsense, of course it's the president." "That's right, the president's wave-breaking fist is a level 2 spiritual technique that he got not long ago. Look at that Dark Crow, his fist doesn't have any momentum at all. I'm afraid he'll be crippled by the president's punch." Is this really the pure spirit realm? At this moment, even Feng Qi couldn't help but have some doubts in his heart. However, the moment the two fists collided, Leng Shiqi's fist suddenly exploded with a fierce tiger's roar. The two fists collided solidly, but neither of them took half a step back. Suddenly, an invisible wave of air shook around them, blowing up the dust on the ground. Then the two of them tacitly stopped. "What pure spiritual energy!" Ji Tianyi clasped his fist and praised. "What a powerful fist technique!" Leng Shiqi replied. "Haha, Brother Dark Crow is one of us from now on. Please come in." Ji Tianyi laughed and made a pleased gesture. "Feng Qi told me that as long as I agree to join the Supreme Society, I can choose any technique, spiritual technique or weapon. I don't know if that's true. Of course it's true. Leng Shiqi nodded his head and walked in confidently. By the time everyone recovered from their shock, they had already entered the tent. At this moment there were also people who noticed that Mu-21 seemed to be a little off, but the moment they got close, they smelled an indescribable smell, so no one asked further. In the big tent, the few of them exchanged greetings for a while. They were also testing Leng Shiqi's background bit by bit. But he had always been a man of few words, so he didn't get anything useful out of him. After a while, Great Heavens Will waved his hand and the others left, leaving only the two of them in the tent. Brother Dark Crow, your cultivation and strength are extraordinary. In fact, you aren't any weaker than me. Originally, the position of vice president was supposed to be yours. But as you know, if you were to become the vice leader right after joining the Supreme Society, I'm afraid there would be some who wouldn't accept it. Great Heavens Will said with a fake smile. It doesn't matter. If there's a chance, I'll show my worth. I wonder if I can see what I deserve. Of course. Brother Dark Crow, please wait a moment. Great Heavens Will saw that Leng Shiqi didn't seem to have much intention of fighting for power. He was delighted and clapped his hands. Then two people came in, each holding a box. One box was big, the other small. Putting the boxes on the ground, the two of them left. Brother Dark Crow, please take a look. Great Heavens Will open the big box. There were a total of 4 weapons inside: a saber, a sword, a dagger, and an axe. They were all grade 2 spiritual artifacts. The small box contained basic books. There were 2 cultivation methods and 4 spiritual techniques. Unfortunately, they were all only grade 1. May I take a closer look? Leng Shiqi casually picked up a cultivation method, flipped to a page and said flatly, "Of course. Brother Dark Crow, please do as you please." Great Heavens Will sat down, picked up a cup of water and drank slowly. Leng Shiqi snickered inwardly. A line of words that others couldn't see appeared before his eyes. Discovered grade 1 cultivation method, record of wind. Learn. Consume 1 skill point. Yes. After 2 breaths, Leng Shiqi frowned slightly. This time he cultivated a grade 1 cultivation method, but found that the increase was minimal. Seems like I already have a grade 3 cultivation method. Cultivating these grade 1 techniques is useless, he thought to himself. As for the other cultivation method, he just picked it up for show and didn't cultivate it anymore. Looking at the 4 spiritual techniques, they were Breaking Gold Blade, Vine Grappling Hand, Wind Finger, and Centipede Curse. Every time Leng Shiqi picked up a spiritual technique, he would seriously look at it a few times. In reality, he used his unlimited skill points to secretly learn it. When he saw the last one, Centipede Curse, he paused for a moment. This is a spiritual technique. In this world, people who could sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and absorb it into their body were collectively known as spirit cultivators. The path of spirit cultivators had been through the baptism of time and could be said to be very complete. However, that didn't mean that all spirit cultivators walked the same path. In fact, the path of spirit cultivators today could be divided into martial artists and spirit sorcerers. It was just that more than 90% of the spirit cultivators were martial artists, so many people equated the two of them. The main reason was because there were too few spirit sorcerers. In order to become a martial artist, one must be able to sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, in order to become a spirit sorcerer, on top of that, one must have an extraordinary amount of spiritual energy. Therefore, spirit sorcerers were very rare. Spiritual techniques were also very rare. The Centipede Curse, in Leng Shiqi's hand, was a spiritual technique. After briefly flipping through it, he realized that it wasn't a spiritual technique that directly attacked. Instead, it planted a centipede curse on the enemy's body, causing unbearable pain and itchiness, as if there really was a centipede in the enemy's body. In the end, the enemy would even scratch their own body and die from festering. I wonder how my spiritual energy is if I can cultivate spiritual techniques. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, a system notification appeared in front of him. Level 1 Spiritual Technique, Centipede Curse discovered. Would you like to learn it? 1 skill point required. Yes. Leng Shiqi was slightly delighted. However, he immediately put on a straight face and said angrily, "What is the meaning of this, President Ji? May I know what made Brother Dark Crow unhappy?" Ji Tianyi made a very exaggerated, confused expression. President Ji already knows the answer to your question. These spiritual techniques are all level 1, and there's even a non-offensive spiritual technique like the vine entanglement. Furthermore, there's even a spiritual technique. Is President Ji joking? Ji Tianyi walked over to take a look and his expression immediately changed. He said loudly, "There's such a thing. My subordinates have not done their job well, please forgive them. However, even though these spiritual techniques are level 1, Brother Dark Crow should know how precious level 2 spiritual techniques are. Brother Dark Crow has just entered the Supreme Assembly. If he really gets a level 2 spiritual technique, I'm afraid he'll be criticized. Moreover, these weapons are genuine grade 2 weapons. In terms of value, they are not inferior to cultivation methods or spiritual techniques." Chapter 42. Leng Shiqi looked at Ji Tianyi quietly, listening to him speak. After a moment of silence, he said, "Then President Ji will have to give me a chance to act. Don't worry, our Supreme Society will make a big move in 6 days. Brother Dark Crow, you are the most important link. If you succeed, you will be the Vice President of the Supreme Society, and you will be free to choose any of our techniques. I hope President Ji won't go back on his word." "Of course not. Brother Dark Crow, rest well for the next few days. I will have Feng 7 serve you. If you need anything, just tell him directly." Ji Tianyi saw that Leng Shiqi had relented, and took the opportunity to ask him to leave. Leng Shiqi nodded slightly, picked up his steel sword, Record of the Wind, and gold cleaving strike and turned to leave. When he reached the door, Feng 7 was waiting for him. "Lord Dark Crow, please follow me." The two walked into a small tent. Feng 7 wanted to say something, but was sent away by Leng Shiqi, and only told to send some food on time. Leng Shiqi sat cross-legged on a wooden stool, thinking about how Ji Tianyi established the Supreme Society. His personality and conduct did not seem like the leader of a faction at all. He even wanted to write the word use on his face. Even if it was the way to control his subordinates, it was still too childish. Shaking his head, Leng Shiqi did not want to think about it. He did not really join the Supreme Society, but only to return a favor. He also got a few decent techniques and a second-level spiritual weapon. After that, Leng Shiqi summoned the system and cultivated all the spiritual skills that he had stolen to the Great Perfection Realm. Then he looked at his own information. Name, Leng Shiqi Lu Xingji. Cultivation, 3rd level of Pure Spirit Realm Techniques. 1st level technique, Mountain Shattering Force. 1st level technique, Record of the Wind. 3rd level technique, Demonic Beast Breaking Technique. Bloodline techniques, Unranked Technique, Triple Water Ripple Palm. Perfection. 1st level technique, Enigmatic Footwork. Perfection. 1st stage spiritual technique, Brushing Willow Sword Style. Great Perfection. 1st stage spiritual skill, Ghost Jade Claw. Consummation. 1st stage spiritual skill, Howling Tiger Fist. Consummation. 1st stage spiritual skill, Sonic Shockwave. Great Perfection. 1st stage spiritual skill, Gold Breaking Single Strike. Great Perfection. 1st stage spiritual technique, Vine. Grappling Hand has reached perfection. 1st stage spiritual technique, Windward Finger. Consummation. 1st stage spiritual technique, Centipede Incantation, has reached perfection. Special spiritual technique, Hand of the Earth. Great Perfection. Special spiritual technique, Chakra Walk Technique. Great Perfection. System Coins. 7. Leng Shiqi nodded silently. At this stage, spiritual techniques that were not ranked were almost useless. Now that he had 4 level 1 spiritual skills, his strength had indeed improved by a step. Next, Leng Shiqi began to temper the spiritual energy in his body, striving to break through to the 4th level of the Pure Spirit Realm as soon as possible. Of course, he did not put all of his attention into it. He was still paying attention to the outside world. On Extreme Heaven's Will's side. Right after Leng Shiqi left, 2 people came in. Both of them were in the Pure Spirit Realm. Red Cloud, Wen Lu Sit. Ji Tianyi seemed to have known that these two would come. The two of them looked at each other and sat down. "President, how strong is that Dark Crow?" "Very strong. In terms of the purity of spiritual energy, I am inferior to him. Moreover, he used a level 1 spiritual skill to fight evenly with my wave-breaking fist. It can be seen that his spiritual skill has been cultivated to an extremely high level. Wen Lu, you are not his opponent." Ji Tianyi's expression darkened slightly and said pointedly. On the side, Red Cloud said, "President, I think this person is quite strange. Can we trust him?" "Trust him or not? Of course not. His origin is indeed a bit strange. I heard from Feng Qi that he did not even know how many times the cultivation resources erupted after the natural disaster. However, because of this, he definitely has nothing to do with Blood Moon. After all, it is a force that appeared after the natural disaster. I have already hinted to him with my attitude before that our extreme will only have a relationship with him. If he wants to get a level 2 spiritual skill, he must do his best. Therefore, no matter how strong he is only a hired thug. There is no way he can become a vice president. Ji Tianyi said while secretly observing the two's expressions. Seeing that they were indeed relieved, he nodded. Alright, you two go do your work. Prepare well for the operation in 6 days. This time there is no room for failure. Ji Tianyi waved his hand and the two left. At this moment, Ji Tianyi was the only one left in the tent. He muttered to himself in a low voice, I can still suppress these two, but if that crow really wants to, I won't be able to suppress him. So, I can only apologize. 5 days later, Leng Shiqi was invited to the big tent. At this time there were already 3 people inside. They were Ji Tianyi, Wen Lu and Red Cloud, the 3 strongest members of the Extreme Will Association. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi more or less knew what was going on. The 4 of them first exchanged some pleasantries, and then Ji Tianyi said seriously, the 3 of you, tomorrow is the time for the cultivation resources to erupt. It is also our chance to deal a heavy blow to Blood Moon. Tomorrow, our Supreme Will Association will move out in full force. Let's split into 2 groups. One group will be led by Red Cloud and me. We will fight for resources as usual, and will definitely cause friction with Blood Moon and attract their attention. The other group will be led by Wen Lu. We will take the risk of going around the mountains and behind Blood Moon, attacking them from both sides. Even so, it will not be enough to deal a heavy blow to Blood Moon. Brother Dark Crow, you are the most important. Understood. Before the opponent's pure spirit realm makes a move, I will only show my spirit gathering strength. Leng Shiqi said calmly. Haha, it is refreshing to deal with smart people. When the time comes, don't leave me, Brother Dark Crow. When the time is right, you and I will work together to kill Mu Feng. Mu Feng? Isn't the leader of Blood Moon called Delta Origi? Leng Shiqi heard and his heart moved slightly. Brother Dark Crow, you may not know, but I have fought Delta Origi several times. Let me put it this way. If she was still at the 3rd level of the pure spirit realm, you and I might have a chance of killing her if we work together. But now that she is at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, the chances of us ambushing her are very small. At most, we will injure her. At that time, not only will we expose you, Brother Dark Crow, we will also not be able to deal a substantial blow to Blood Moon. Ji Tianyi sighed faintly and explained. He was also very envious of the cultivation talent of Blood Moon's leader, Delta Origi. So, it is better to break 1 finger than to injure all 10, Leng Shiqi continued. That's right. Call me when we move out. Also, don't forget your promise. With that, Leng Shiqi stood up and left. 1 day later at night. At this time, the Supreme Will Society's camp was solemn. Everyone was slightly raising their heads as if waiting for something. Soon after. Bang. A huge sound rang out. With the blood-colored tower as the center, dozens of colorful streaks of light shot out in all directions. At this time, no one spoke, but it could be faintly felt that many people's breathing had become heavier. Ji Tianyi waved his hand, and nearly 100 people quickly walked out of the camp like fish. Then they split into 2 groups and quickly ran in different directions. Chapter 43. In the crowd, Leng Shiqi was not far behind Ji Tianyi. His black robe didn't seem so strange in the dim environment. Fighting for resources was a very normal thing on Blood Mist Island. To the Supreme Society and Blood Moon, the 2 factions that resided in this stone forest, fighting was already a common occurrence. So today the 2 forces were still fighting fiercely everywhere and didn't feel anything wrong. In the end, a large number of people from both sides gathered together to fight for a box that shone with golden light. As everyone knew, the box with golden light contained a cultivation method. Cultivation methods were the foundation of cultivation. More importantly, this ball of golden light was more intense than anything they had ever seen before. In the dim environment, it was so dazzling. The 2 forces added up to 100 people gathered together, 100 pairs of eyes staring at the golden light on the ground. Ji Tianyi and Red Cloud stood at the front of the Supreme Society. Blood Moon also had 2 people, a man and a woman, both of whom were in the pure spirit realm. But Delta Origi wasn't there. Seeing this, Ji Tianyi was half happy and half worried. Without Delta Origi, he could smoothly kill Mu Feng according to the plan. But at the same time, a person at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm was a huge variable. He couldn't find her whereabouts and felt uneasy. Ji Tianyi, Since everyone wants this cultivation method, let's follow the old rules and make a bet. The leader of Blood Moon's group, a young man in green, said. Where's Delta Origi? Let her come. Ji Tianyi looked at the young man in disdain and said with a disdainful tone. You think you're worthy to fight the Moon Lord? The young man's expression turned slightly crazy when he heard this and pointed at Ji Tianyi angrily. Ji Tianyi's face darkened. I'll return those words to you. You're not worthy to fight me. Get lost. Ah Chen. The young man was furious and wanted to say something, but was stopped by the girl beside him. Don't be rash. Something's wrong. The girl whispered. What's wrong? Ah Chen was stunned. Look at the members of the Supreme Society. Their eyes are shining and their fighting spirit is high. It doesn't seem to be just about cultivation methods. I'll hold him back and wait for the Moon Master to arrive so that he won't cause any trouble. The girl took a step forward, and the spiritual energy in her body began to circulate rapidly. She raised her head and said, President Ji, do I have the qualifications? The second layer of the pure spirit realm? What? Great Heavens will sensed Mu Feng's spiritual energy fluctuations and was secretly shocked. The other party had actually broken through to the second level. Today's plan would not be so easy. At this moment he regretted not giving Leng Shiqi a rank 2 spiritual skill back then. I couldn't ask for more. Fight. Great Heavens will suddenly shouted. Then all the members of the Supreme Class Society shouted one word in unison, fight. Then several dozen people swarmed forward, catching Blood Moon off guard. Extreme Heavens will, what is the meaning of this? Mu Feng's eyes widened in anger. After a long period of fighting, the two forces had gradually formed a tacit rule. It was just ordinary resources. Everyone fought for it based on their own ability. If an unusually precious resource appeared, each side would send out a few people to fight, and the winner would get it. This way many unnecessary casualties were avoided. However, this time the Supreme Society suddenly broke the rule, and Blood Moon's people did not react in time. In the blink of an eye, several people were killed or injured. But they immediately reacted, and hundreds of people began to fight fiercely in this stone forest. And among the pure spirit realm cultivators, Red Cloud went for Ah Chen. Great Heavens will personally dealt with Mu Feng. Great Heavens will put on a pair of silver fingerless gloves on his hands. The shadows of his fists were powerful, and after a few moves, Mu Feng was suppressed. Mu Feng held a thin sword in his hand, and his swordsmanship was exquisite. But after all, his cultivation was a level lower, and he could only retreat. Great Heavens will, do you know what a stupid decision you've made? When the Moon Lord arrives, it will be the time of your death. Mu Feng turned around and forced Great Heavens will to retreat and said angrily. You should worry about yourself first. So what if Delta Origi is at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm? She can't be stronger than me. She can't kill me. Great Heavens Will's face was somewhat sinister and said fiercely at the same time, he threw another punch. Good, well said. But I'll return the same words to you. You're only at the 3rd level of the pure spirit realm, how can you be stronger than me? You can't kill me either. I just need to drag it out until the Moon Lord returns. Let's see how you deal with this. Then let's see if you can drag it out until Delta Origi returns. Wave-breaking fist. Great Heavens will roared, and his fists released light, wrapping the air and attacking Mu Feng. Mu Feng held the thin sword horizontally, and then slowly rotated it. Every time it rotated, the spirit energy on the sword became stronger. She was concentrating, doing her best to prepare to block Great Heavens Will's move. However, at this moment, a black shadow rushed out from the crowd and leaped up. With a shing sound, the steel sword was unsheathed. The black shadow raised the steel sword high, and the blade reflected a strange red light under the blood-red sky, and fiercely chopped down at Mu Feng. That black shadow was Leng Shiqi, who had been looking for an opportunity. Under the pincer attack of the two fierce attacks, Mu Feng's expression finally changed. At this moment she finally understood why Great Heavens will suddenly had so much confidence. It turned out that Great Heavens will had another pure spirit realm in Great Heavens will. At this moment of life and death, she shouted, and actually ignored the black shadow behind her, and stabbed Great Heavens will with her sword. Great Heavens will couldn't retreat, couldn't give way. There was only one chance like this and he had to stop Mu Feng. His fist aura faintly became stronger. Fist and sword collided. Mu Feng's sword blade slashed on Great Heavens will's gloves and sparks burst out. Suddenly Mu Feng's sword move changed and in an instant, a few sword flowers appeared, enveloping Great Heavens will. But Great Heaven's will was unmoved. His fist aura sank, and using force to break technique, he forcibly resisted the sword shadow and punched Mu Feng's abdomen. Pfft. Mu Feng's body suddenly arched and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Most of it sprayed on Great Heaven's will, but he didn't care. At this moment, Great Heaven's will's entire right arm and shoulder were cut open by Mu Feng's sword. Now that his fist aura was exhausted, he hurriedly retreated. Because Leng Shiqi's fierce blade had already fallen. Gold-breaking blade. Mu Feng smiled miserably, his heart was dead, but he still raised his thin sword to make a final resistance. But now the spirit light on the sword body was dim. Ding! Leng Shiqi's steel blade fiercely smashed onto Mu Feng's sword. How could the heavily injured Mu Feng block a blade that he had been accumulating power for a long time? Suddenly, Mu Feng's body sank a few inches into the ground. The second-level spirit sword in his hand held on for 2 breaths, and then suddenly broke. A second-level spirit weapon wasn't much stronger than a first-level spirit weapon in terms of material, but it was easier to channel spirit power, and could also withstand more spirit power. Leng Shiqi's blade aura didn't decrease, and the blade light slashed down. A deep wound appeared on Mu Feng's forehead, and then he softly fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Chapter 44. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianyi laughed maniacally when he saw Mu Feng die. Brother Dark Crow, your timing is perfect. Killing this person is like cutting off one of Delta Origi's arms. When we return, I'll give you a rank 2 technique with both hands. At this moment, the surrounding spirit-gathering cultivators subconsciously looked over. Seeing this, the morale of Supreme Society's members was greatly boosted. Blood Moon's members were a little flustered, especially Ah Chen, whose face was pale. At this time, Supreme Society had 3 pure spirit stage cultivators. If they worked together, would he still have a way out? When Ji Tianyi was in high spirits and was about to start a massacre, Blood Moon's side suddenly made some noise, and then quickly quieted down. Blood Moon's group suddenly separated neatly from the middle, forming a small path. A figure walked out step by step from the darkness. It was a petite figure with her hair casually tied up, revealing a delicate face. Although she looked a little childish, she already had a beauty that could topple cities. At this moment, her expression was cold, and her body was emitting a murderous aura that made people tremble. The person who came was Delta Origi. Leng Shiqi subconsciously touched the mask on his face. Ji Tianyi's expression also changed and his eyes flashed. He said loudly, Brother Dark Crow, your move just now was really fierce. It directly broke Mu Feng's sword and killed him. Ji Tianyi, what do you mean? Leng Shiqi immediately reacted and shouted angrily. Delta Origi heard this and her cold gaze fell on him. She asked with murderous intent, You killed Mu Feng? Whoosh, Gu San's spiritual energy at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm suddenly burst out, causing a gust of wind to blow at her hair. Leng Shiqi's aura weakened and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back. He retreated to Ji Tianyi's side and said with a slightly panicked voice, Let me explain, die. With a flip of her left hand, Delta Origi's jade-like hand instantly transformed into a pitch-black ghostly claw, tearing through the air as it rushed over. Seeing this, Ji Tianyi's lips curled up slightly. Other than the Delta Origi, there were also 2 spirit cultivators at the 1st level of the pure spirit realm in the Blood Moon, and the reason why he chose Mu Feng as his target and not Ah Chen. This was because the leader of Blood Moon, Delta Origi, and Mu Feng were as close as sisters. It could be said that whoever killed Mu Feng would have to suffer the wrath of the Delta Origi. This person could not be Ji Tianyi, nor could it be Wen Lu or Hong Yun. And Leng Shiqi, who joined halfway, naturally became the best candidate. Most importantly, this Dark Crow wasn't weak either. If the Delta Origi wanted to kill him, they would probably be injured as well. After that, Blood Moon would lose a pure spirit realm martial practitioner, and their leader would be injured as well. They would definitely choose to go into hiding. At that time, all the resources in the Stone Forest area would belong to Ji Tianyi's society. Monopolizing all the resources, he would naturally be able to break through to the 4th level of the pure spirit realm in a short period of time, and no longer have to fear the Delta Origi. Thinking of this, Ji Tianyi's smile deepened. However, at this moment, an extreme sense of danger suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. This sense of danger had saved him many times before. Without thinking, he moved his body to the side. It was also at this moment that his body paused. A steel blade had already pierced his body. Ji looked at the blade protruding from the right side of his heart in a daze, covered in his own blood. He didn't need to turn his head to know who did this, but he couldn't understand why this happened. Why? At the same time, the Delta Orgi suddenly changed their target and charged towards Ji. Cough cough. Ji couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. He always thought that he was the chess player, but he didn't expect that he was just a chess piece. A hint of viciousness appeared on his face, and he quickly took out a fiery red bead from his waist and threw it out. The Delta Orgi's expression changed when she saw it and she shouted, "Everyone retreat!" Lung Shichi pulled out his blade, and used confusion steps to quickly retreat. The bead spun in the air and suddenly burst out with a dazzling red light. Then a large wave of fire burst out. Those who were slow to run were directly swallowed by the fire, and the whole scene instantly became chaotic. A battered figure took advantage of the chaos to rush out of the crowd. Is Ji? He actually didn't die. Lung Shichi and Delta Orgi looked at each other from afar, and Lung Shichi immediately chased after him. Delta Orgi, on the other hand, locked her gaze on Scarlet Cloud, and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Time returned to the night 5 days ago. During the day, Lung Shichi found out the approximate location of the blood moon from Feng 7, and after night fell, he disguised himself and used the Hand of Earth to leave the Supreme Society. The location of the blood moon was similar to the Supreme Society, but the area was slightly larger. Lung Shichi quietly snuck into the center of the tent, and waited for a while to make sure that there was no sound from above before he poked his head out. But the moment he poked his head out, la, a silver flexible sword twisted its body and stabbed over like a poisonous snake. "It's me." Lung Shichi's expression changed, and he didn't expect Delta Orgi to react so quickly. His hands instantly turned into black ghost claws, and at the same time he used confusion steps to dodge the sword. "Hey, it's you?" Delta Orgi recognized the ghost jade claws and confusion steps, and she knew that there were only 2 people on Blood Mist Island who cultivated these 2 spiritual techniques. "Lung Shichi, how did you get in here? What are you trying to do with a mask on in the middle of the night?" Even though she knew that the intruder was Lung Shichi, it was already late at night, and a man had barged in. No matter how strong and cold Delta Orgi was in front of outsiders, she was still a young girl of 12 or 13 years old. Her cheeks reddened, and she immediately shouted angrily in a low voice. "I had no choice. Time was tight and I have something important to discuss with you." Seeing Delta Orgi like this, Lung Shichi spread his hands and said. Delta Orgi stared at Lung Shichi for a while, and her eyes changed several times, and several thoughts flashed through her mind. With a flick of her wrist, the flexible sword wrapped around her waist, and then she said unhappily, "What is it? Tell me." Lung Shichi organized his words and told her about how he came here by chance and joined the Supreme Society. As for why he came to the Stone Forest, he just casually said it. Delta Orgi heard this and knew that this was an opportunity. An opportunity to heavily injure or even destroy the Supreme Society. Immediately, her eyes filled with a sharp light and she said, "I understand. I understand what you mean. Extreme Heavens will definitely hide you as a trump card, but you only have one chance to act. His target may not necessarily choose me." Lung Shichi nodded and then said, "Yes, you are at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm after all. Even if I ambush you, I don't have the confidence to kill you. I think his target will choose one of your 2 subordinates at the pure spirit realm. It's very likely to be Mu Feng." Chapter 45. Delta Orgi began to move back and forth. With a thoughtful look in her eyes, she asked, "What is Ji Tianyi's attitude towards you? Do you think he is sincere in wanting you to join Ji Tianyi's society?" "No. Then his target will definitely be Mu Feng," Delta Orgi said in a deep voice. "What?" A meaningful smile appeared on Delta Orgi's face and said, "Because many people know that Mu Feng and I are sisters, Ji Tianyi will deliberately let Mu Feng die in your hands, and then I will definitely kill you. He also wants to borrow my hand to get rid of you." "As close as sisters?" Lung Shichi listened to Gusan's words and didn't care about anything else, but glanced at her strangely. He thought to himself, "I'm afraid it's plastic." Feeling Lung Shichi's gaze, Delta Orgi did not care and continued, "Why don't we beat him at his own game? Ji Tianyi will definitely make his move 5 days later. When the cultivation resources erupt, I will hide nearby and not show my face, allowing his plan to proceed smoothly." "You mean Mu Feng?" Lung Shichi said as he made a throat-slitting gesture. Delta Origi turned sideways, pondered for a moment, and a ruthless look flashed across her eyes and said, "Only by killing her can Ji Tian-yi think that everything is going smoothly, and only then can he completely let down his guard against you." After saying this, Delta Origi's body was full of gloomy coldness. Lung Shichi frowned, feeling that the Delta Origi in front of him seemed a little unfamiliar, and asked tentatively, "But she is after all a pure spirit realm, are you willing?" Delta Origi suddenly changed the topic and asked, "Lung Shichi, I have more than 20 spirit cultivators at the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm under me. Do you know why they have been unable to break through to the pure spirit realm?" Hearing this, Lung Shichi's face showed a thoughtful expression, and then he said 2 words, "Cultivation method." "That's right, all the cultivation methods are in my hands. They rely on the introductory spirit chi art and do not know how to open up the chi si. It is almost impossible for them to break through to the pure spirit realm. In the next few days, I will find 3 more people to pass down the cultivation method, and after this matter, it won't be long before 3 capable pure spirit realm warriors appear under my command." Since the words were already so clear, Lung Shichi's words, nodded slightly and did not say anything. "Do you think I've changed?" Gu San suddenly asked faintly. "People change. There is nothing bad about it. You are indeed very suitable to lead a force," Lung Shichi said, waving his hand. Delta Origi turned around and stared at Lung Shichi. The coldness on her face disappeared without a trace, and asked in a low voice, "Don't you think I'm too ruthless?" "This is Blood Mist Island, there's nothing wrong with being ruthless, I just hope you don't let it get to your head." After saying that, Lung Shichi's palm pressed down, and his body sank into the ground and left. Under the blood-red sky, Ji Tianyi was injured all over, but he ignored it and ran with all his strength. Because he knew that once he stopped, he would die without a doubt. Vaguely, he seemed to hear footsteps coming from behind. Gradually, the footsteps were getting closer and closer, closer and closer. Ji Tianyi shouted at the top of his lungs as if he had stimulated the strength of his whole body, and his speed was actually faster. Caw, caw. However, at this time he suddenly heard a burst of loud and ear-piercing crows. People said that crows were ominous. He hurriedly turned his head and saw a ferocious purple crow had already pounced behind him. Hiss. The purple crow's sharp claws tore off a piece of flesh from his back, and not only that, a layer of purple juice appeared on the injured area and was constantly corroding his wound. Ji Tianyi howled and fell to the ground, looking at the purple crow in horror, and his lips trembled from the pain. A rank 1 monster. Ziyu, come back. A black figure walked over, and with a wave of his arm, the crow obediently flew to the black figure's shoulder. Lung Shichi lightly patted Ziyu's head. This was the first time he saw Ziyu fight with someone. Its speed was very fast, its claws were very sharp, and it was also corrosive. This kind of combat power was considered high among rank 1 monsters. Ji Tianyi saw Ziyu and Lung Shichi's intimate actions, and his eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. However, it was immediately replaced by endless hatred. Dark Crow. Good technique, you hit it well. It's okay, the main thing is that you're not smart enough. Lung Shichi said as he approached. Then you chased after me just to humiliate me? Winner takes all, I lost, just kill me. Ji Tianyi's expression showed a bit of shame and anger. Lung Shichi stepped forward and in a few flashes he was right in front of Ji Tianyi. Ji Tianyi subconsciously resisted, but who knew that Lung Shichi's hand twisted left and right, like a vine coiling around Ji Tianyi's arm. Then with a crack sound, Ji Tianyi's left arm joint was dislocated. This is the vine twisting technique. Ji Tianyi endured the pain and shouted in shock. That's right. Lung Shichi then dislocated the joints of his legs, completely cutting off any hope of Ji Tianyi's counterattack. Impossible, you clearly took the gold severing blade. The vine twisting technique has never been taught to outsiders, how did you learn it? I have an eidetic memory, right? Aren't you asking too many questions? Please understand your current situation. With your injuries you'll bleed to death in no time. Lung Shichi was also a bit helpless and didn't want to dwell on this issue. Ha! Ji Tianyi suddenly laughed, and when he laughed it tore at his wounds, causing more blood to flow. You chased after me, controlled me, but didn't kill me. It's nothing more than wanting to get something from me. If you kneel down and beg me, maybe I'll be happy and give it to you, ha ha, cough cough. Ji Tianyi knew that he didn't have long to live and said crazily, then coughed up another mouthful of blood. So you're not stupid, give me the wave-breaking fist and I'll give you a quick death. Lung Shichi said lightly. Wave-breaking fist, haha, so it's for the wave-breaking fist. Dark Crow, you think you're smart, why would you say something so stupid? Give me a quick death? I don't have much time left anyway, I might as well die, why would I give you the wave-breaking fist? Ji Tianyi seemed to have seen through life and death, and looked like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. That's true, but aren't you afraid that I'll torture you? Scared? Why would I be scared of you? Come at me if you have the guts, the harder you hit, the faster I'll die, I have to thank you. Ji Tianyi's face was twisted as he shouted, and a bit of bloodthirst appeared. Lung Shiqi shrugged slightly, and then his hands flew, quickly forming a few spirit seals. Then a palm-sized dark red circle of light appeared in front of Lung Shiqi's palm. A slender blood-red centipede appeared in the circle of light, and the centipede was still twisting its body as if it was alive. Great heavens, Will saw all of Lung Shiqi's actions. Gradually he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes grew bigger and bigger as he shook his head non-stop. He muttered to himself like a madman, "Impossible, impossible, impossible." Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed, and the spirit seal in his hand changed, and the blood-red centipede turned into a blood-red light that drilled into Ji Tianyi's body. No. Chapter 46. No. Great Will screamed in fear, but his voice soon turned into a scream of agony. At this moment, the blood-red centipede was ceaselessly gnawing at his flesh, meridians and internal organs within his body. Such pain was not something a human could endure. Great Will's body began to twitch, red and white liquid flowed out of his mouth. I'll talk. Not long after, Great Will used all his strength to say these 3 words. Lung Shiqi made a spiritual seal, stopping the blood centipede from moving. Great Will lay on the ground like a pile of mud, his body occasionally twitching. Dictate. Lung Shiqi tore off a piece of relatively clean clothing from Great Will's body and dipped it in the blood on the ground, looking like a primary school student taking notes seriously. Then Ji Tianyi recited the mnemonic chant of the level 2 spiritual technique, wave-breaking fist. Until Lung Shiqi saw a system notification, he nodded in satisfaction. At this moment, Great Will seemed to have lost all his strength and hope, his eyes staring straight at the sky. However, there was no moon in the sky, nor was there a starry sky. There was only a boundless curtain of blood. Lung Shiqi walked in front of him with his sword. Great Will closed his eyes and smiled. That smile carried a sense of relief and innocence, like a 13-year-old boy's smile. On the other side of the battlefield, it was a one-sided situation. On the Supreme Society's side, Great Will escaped, Hong Yun died in battle, and when Lu was not here, none of the remaining people could stop Delta Origi. Not long after, the Supreme Society that originally had over 50 people was now reduced to 20 people. The remaining 20 people would fight to the death, because they still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. However, something suddenly fell from the sky, completely shattering their hope. It was Great Will's head. Delta Origi slashed the enemy's throat, her snow-white robe was already stained with blood, making her even colder. When she saw Great Will's head fall to the ground, her heart skipped a beat and she immediately shouted, "Great Will is dead, those who surrender will be spared. Extreme Heaven's will is dead. Those who surrender will be spared. Extreme Heaven's will is dead. Those who surrender will be spared." The members of Blood Moon began to shout one after another. For a moment, their shouts shook the heavens. The remaining members of the Supreme Society looked at each other, their faces ashen, almost losing the will to fight. Finally, one of them threw down his weapon. This was like a signal. More and more people surrendered, and in the end almost all of them were subdued. The Delta Origi were looking around, but they did not find Lung Shiqi. They seemed to have thought of something. At this time, Ah Chin, who was covered in blood, limped over. He seemed to be seriously injured, but his face was full of excitement. Moon Lord, your subordinate is impressed. So the Moon Lord had already grasped everything in his hands. The Supreme Meeting is finished. Next we'll rest and reorganize. Then we'll go straight for the Supreme Society's camp. Wiping them out won't be a problem. There's no need for that. They should be here by now. Delta Origi's words confused Ah Chin. However, in the next moment, a burst of battle cries rang out not far away. Kill. Kill. Ah Chin, including the members of Blood Moon, turned to look. They saw the other Pure Spirit Realm member of the Supreme Society, Wen Lu, charging over with more than 20 people. Meanwhile, the members of the Supreme Society who had surrendered all lowered their heads. They did not have any other thoughts because of the arrival of reinforcements. Because they knew that those 20 people were purely here to die. Not to mention the others, Delta Origi alone could take care of half of them. When Lu led his brothers over from the mountain, taking a risk and circling around, narrowly avoiding 2 first-grade demons. Just as he was about to attack Blood Moon from the front and back, and make a great contribution and be promoted to vice president, he gradually realized that something was wrong. Where was the president? Where was Red Cloud? Where was Dark Crow? Where were the members of the Supreme Society? As far as the eye could see, the people standing were all members of Blood Moon. When Lu was completely dumbfounded. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, there were more than 10 corpses on the ground, and the number of people who surrendered reached more than 30. Aha, I didn't expect the members of the Supreme Society to be this stupid. They even came here to die. Moon Lord, you're really smart. Now that there's almost no one left in the Supreme Society, there must be a lot of resources in their camp. Moon Lord, give me some men, I'll bring them to take it away. Ah Chen volunteered. Delta Origi shook his head, saying, it's too late. There shouldn't be anything good left there. Ah Chen was puzzled. Go back and recuperate. Ah yes. At this time, there were still people in the Supreme Society's camp. Although the Supreme Society had come out in full force, staking everything on this one throw, there were still a few injured people left in the camp. Among them was Mu Shiqing. The few injured people were all talking and laughing, as if the Supreme Society's fight for the Stone Forest was just around the corner. Only Mu Shiqing was sitting in a corner blankly, and no one paid attention to him. Suddenly, Mu Shiqing seemed to have heard a slight movement. Then, the blankness in his eyes instantly disappeared, and was replaced by a sharp light. Oh! Mu Shiqing suddenly stood up. The others saw him and looked at him. This person is stupid. Don't worry about him, let's continue. With a bang, Mu Shiqing instantly knelt down, his head lowered to the ground, and said a strange sentence, Greetings, Lord. This humble one is willing to lead the way for you. The others immediately looked at each other, not knowing what Mu Shiqing was doing. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared in front of them. Before they could react, a cold sword light flashed and they lost their lives. Lung Shiqi stepped in front of Mu Shiqing in a black robe. He knelt even lower. Interesting. Lead the way. Lung Shiqi said calmly. Please follow me, Lord. Mu Shiqing stood up, but his body was still bowed as he walked in a direction. The two came in front of a tent and Mu Shiqing said, This is where the resources are stored. Usually Lord Red Cloud and Lord Wenlu take turns guarding it. Lung Shiqi nodded and walked into the tent, while Mu Shiqing lowered his head and stayed where he was. There was a large amount of food and water piled up around the tent, and a few wooden boxes in the middle. Lung Shiqi opened them one by one. 2 of them were the 2 that Ji Tianyi had given him before. The rest were unranked spiritual skills, grade 1 weapons, spirit stones and pills. Lung Shiqi directly put all the food and water into his backpack. Lung Shiqi learned the unranked spiritual skills on the spot. Although he could hardly use them, it was better than nothing. He sold all the grade 1 weapons to the system for 87 system coins. There were also 3 types of grade 2 weapons: sword, dagger and axe. But Lung Shiqi's backpack only had 2 slots left after removing the food, water bags, grade 3 spiritual sword and mission cards. Lung Shiqi thought for a moment, then tied the dagger to his ankle, put the axe and steel sword into his backpack, and held the grade 2 spiritual sword in his hand. Finally he packed up the spirit stones and pills and carried them on his back, then walked out of the tent with a small box. Chapter 47. In fact, Lung Shiqi knew that the things he could find here were not the most valuable. Especially the level 2 skills. These things would definitely be destroyed after being memorized by Great Heaven's will, and would not be left here. Even so, Lung Shiqi had already earned a lot. At this time, Mu 21 was still waiting respectfully outside the tent. When he saw Lung Shiqi come out, he was about to say something but was interrupted by Lung Shiqi throwing a small box at him. You're very smart, but unfortunately you followed the wrong person. I'll leave these to you. How long you can live will depend on your own ability. Lung Shiqi said calmly and then left. Thank you for not killing me, my lord. Thank you for giving me a new lease of life. Mu 21 knelt sincerely until Lung Shiqi's figure could no longer be seen. He opened the box. There was a skill manual and 3 level 1 skills inside. The second day. In the big tent in the center of Blood Moon's camp, Delta Orgi sat on a wooden stool. Her fingers tapped on the armrest from time to time, looking a little anxious. Soon Leng Shiqi floated out from the ground. Delta Orgi's eyes lit up at first, but when she saw the bulging bag on Leng Shiqi's back, the corner of her eyes couldn't help but twitch a few times. Looks like you've gained quite a lot. It's so. These are all small things that you won't be interested in. Besides, compared to what you've gained, these are nothing. How does it feel to have the stone forest all to yourself? Leng Shiqi patted the bag on his back and said casually. Delta Orgi nodded slightly and said softly, "It's not that great." Leng Shiqi looked at her in surprise. He understood Delta Orgi's ambition. Now that she had the stone forest all to herself, why did she not look very happy? "I've been thinking of ways to destroy the Supreme Will Society, but it's very difficult. Even though Blood Moon was stronger than them and I was stronger than Great Heaven's Will, we weren't strong enough to destroy them. If they forcefully attacked, it would only result in both sides suffering losses and give others an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. But now that you've appeared by chance, you've suddenly done it, but it feels a little surreal." Delta Orgi explained. Leng Shiqi was a little amused when he heard that and continued, "As the saying goes, an unintentionally planted willow grows a shade. I came here by chance, joined your enemy's faction by chance, and helped you get rid of the Society of Excellence. Could it be that you will only be satisfied after a narrow victory in a bloody battle?" "That's true." Delta Orgi chuckled. "By the way, I want to ask you something. Do you still remember the direction of the cave where we took the spirit fruit?" Delta Orgi pondered for a moment, then pointed in a direction and said, "Go this way." After passing through the misty area, you'll reach the withered forest. The cave is in the withered forest. Withered forest. Hearing that, Leng Shiqi understood. Actually, he didn't go very far. The stone forest and the withered forest were only separated by a misty area. It was also the place where Leng Shiqi accidentally found the underground space when he killed the ape-shaped monster. "So you're here to say goodbye to me?" Delta Orgi saw through Leng Shiqi's intentions. "That's right. There's a question that I haven't asked. Since you've decided to go back, you should have just left. Why did you help me this time?" Delta Orgi stared straight at Leng Shiqi and asked. Leng Shiqi turned his head slightly, not daring to look into her eyes. This time was a coincidence, and it's also a chance to return the favor for the spirit fruit. Delta Orgi heard this, and a layer of frost gradually covered her face. "Return the favor? Who needs you to return the favor?" Leng Shiqi was stunned. He touched the tip of his nose and was about to say something, but Delta Orgi beat him to it. "Since you want to return the favor, then join Blood Moon. I know you're hiding secrets, but who doesn't? I won't ask you. Besides, you should have already experienced the benefits of having a force." Leng Shiqi patted the bulging backpack behind him and nodded. "That's true. However, I do have some grudges that I haven't settled yet, so I still have to go back first. I'll consider joining Blood Moon." "Oh." Delta Orgi looked at Leng Shiqi in surprise. She only said those words out of anger, but she didn't expect Leng Shiqi to actually make a concession. Based on her understanding of Leng Shiqi, he wasn't being perfunctory. He really would consider joining Blood Moon. This time, before Delta Orgi could say anything, Leng Shiqi tightened his backpack and said, "All right, I'll give you an answer soon. I'll be leaving first. All right, by the way, where can I find the demon beast?" Delta Orgi. On the west side of the stone forest on the Blood Mist Island, there was a huge black bear that was half a zhang tall walking slowly. It seemed to be bored to death. Whoosh. Suddenly, the giant black bear turned its head and discovered a human figure. Two scarlet rays of light shot out from the giant black bear's eyes, and it immediately charged towards the black figure. The black figure also saw the giant bear charging towards it, but it didn't seem to be panicking. It lightly moved its feet and hid behind a strange rock. Boom! The giant black bear's fan-sized paw slammed down, smashing the huge rock into pieces. Rocks flew everywhere, but the giant black bear didn't discover anyone. Instead, it heard a voice behind it. "The black hair bear is indeed very strong, but it's a pity that it's not very fast." Leng Shiqi, who was dressed in a black robe, slowly drew his spirit sword and muttered to himself. Previously, Leng Shiqi had heard from Delta Orgi that there was a very strong rank 1 demon beast, the black hair bear. At this stage, the forces that could be brought out basically had 2 or 3 pure spirit realm cultivators and dozens of spirit gathering realm cultivators. It was no longer a problem for them to fight against a rank 1 demon beast. At the very least they could retreat. However, this black hair bear was not only very strong, its skin was also very thick. The attacks of ordinary spirit gathering realm cultivators were useless, and even pure spirit realm cultivators would find it difficult to break its skin. Basically, as long as the black hair bear appeared, whether it was the Supreme Union or Blood Moon, they would all retreat. Then let me see how thick your skin is. As soon as Leng Shiqi's voice fell, he closed his eyes and opened them, his entire body exuding a sense of agility. It was also at this moment that the black hair bear pounced over again. Its dark palms suddenly fell, but it pounced on empty air again. At the same time, Leng Shiqi turned into a series of illusions. 5 sword rays flashed, and he directly appeared behind the black hair bear. The chaotic flowers gradually dazzled the eyes. Puchi? Puchi? Deep wounds suddenly appeared on the black hair bear's neck and limbs, and pillars of blood spurted out. Roar, roar, roar. The black hair bear was in pain and let out a deafening roar. Leng Shiqi looked at the black hair bear in surprise and thought, its skin is really hard. Thinking back, his dazzling flowers was able to kill the ape-shaped demon beast in one move, although the ape-shaped demon beast was already severely injured at that time. It could be said that the black hair bear was the first demon beast that had taken the dazzling flowers head-on and not died. Chapter 48. The black-haired bear was covered in blood, but it was even more brutal. It bared its sharp fangs and its 10 claws suddenly doubled in length. It waved its arms and rushed over. Leng Shiqi's expression remained unchanged. Then let's try this move. No matter how brutal the black-haired bear was, its speed was far inferior to the ape-like monster. Leng Shiqi used his confusing footwork to easily dodge the black-haired bear's giant paws. Bang! The black-haired bear once again smashed a large boulder. After that, it seemed to be exhausted and stopped in place to catch its breath. Chance. Leng Shiqi stretched out his right arm and clenched his fist. Wang, a weak wave of air emitted from Leng Shiqi's fist. At the same time, Leng Shiqi's aura continued to rise. Ha! When his aura reached its peak, Leng Shiqi let out a fierce shout and stretched his fist backward. Then, his fist smashed out violently like a wave breaking through the wind. Before the black-haired bear could react, Leng Shiqi's fist landed on its lower back with a boom. A large part of the black-haired bear's back caved in and the faint sound of bones breaking could be heard. However, Leng Shiqi's attack was not over yet. In the next moment, his fist suddenly erupted with a burst of tiger roars. A majestic spiritual force poured into the black-haired bear's body and wantonly destroyed its internal organs. Blood with a stench flowed out of the black-haired bear's mouth and its huge body swayed. Leng Shiqi did not give it a chance to fight back. A sword and saber appeared in each of his hands. Then the sword and saber flashed out. Not long after, the black-haired bear's body fell to the ground. At the same time, a line of words appeared in front of Leng Shiqi's eyes. The price is 19 system coins. Do you want to sell? No. Leng Shiqi did not come to kill monsters to earn system coins. There were 2 reasons. The first reason was to test his strength. In the past 2 days he had been inspired by lustful flowers. When he had nothing to do, he had been thinking about whether he could combine other spiritual techniques. The move just now was a combination of the wave-breaking fist, tiger roaring fist, and triple fold palm. The level 2 spiritual skill, wave-breaking fist, was the first wave of attacks. The tiger roaring fist was hidden, and after contact, it became the second wave of explosion. Leng Shiqi then integrated the 3-fold palm technique into it, causing the second wave of explosion to directly hit the enemy's body. Attacking both internally and externally, combining hardness and gentleness. Tiger breaking 3 waves fist. Looking at it now, the power of this move was indeed ferocious. In terms of explosive power, it was not inferior to lustful chaotic blossoms. Moreover, this move was extremely ferocious, which made up for what Leng Shiqi lacked the most. However, it was a pity that the tiger breaking 3 waves fist hadn't completely fused together. There was still room for improvement. Other than that, there was another reason: to test the effects of the demonic beast essence technique. There were many types of cultivation arts. Even if they were of the same rank, they would have different characteristics. For example, the level 1 cultivation art mountain shattering force that he cultivated could refine his spirit energy faster. Record of the Wind would allow him to use his spirit energy more flexibly. The level 3 cultivation art demonic beast essence technique naturally had its own characteristics, which was that it could refine demon beasts to increase his cultivation. This cultivation art had 3 levels: demon blood refining, demon pill swallowing, and demon soul devouring. With Leng Shiqi's current cultivation, he could only refine the first level of demon blood refining. The black-haired bear was the best material. Standing beside the black-haired bear's corpse, Leng Shiqi waved his hand, and Ziyu flew into the sky and circled around to guard him. On the other hand, Leng Shiqi formed a spiritual seal with his hand and shouted, "Duo!" Immediately, the black-haired bear's wounds began to spurt out scarlet blood. The blood gathered and condensed. Gradually, all the blood in the black-haired bear's body was sucked dry, and its body became a bit shriveled. In the air above its body, a 2-foot-wide ball of blood condensed. Leng Shiqi's spiritual seal changed and the ball of blood began to spin rapidly. It became smaller at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its color became darker and darker. After half an hour, Leng Shiqi's forehead was covered in a layer of sweat, and he withdrew his spiritual seal. The ball of blood was only the size of a fist, and its color was completely black and red. Leng Shiqi reached out and held the ball of blood in his hand. He suddenly felt a sticky feeling and a strong stench. "Do I have to eat this thing?" Leng Shiqi's mouth twitched and he found it hard to accept. However, he had to accept it. As long as he could quickly increase his cultivation, this was nothing. Leng Shiqi then called out the system, and a notification appeared in front of him. "It's worth 15 system coins. Do you want to sell it?" Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly. After pondering for a moment, he chose, yes. The black-haired bear's huge body suddenly disappeared, and only some blood stains on the ground were left to prove that it had once existed. Leng Shiqi then quickly left the place. In the battle just now, Leng Shiqi looked powerful and extraordinary, but in fact he had used up more than half of his spiritual power. Whether it was the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes or the 3 waves tiger breaking fist, they were both spiritual techniques that consumed a lot of spiritual power. After refining the demon blood, he used both spiritual power and mental power at the same time. Now he had less than 30% of his spiritual power left. After calling back Ziyu, Leng Shiqi quickly left. Leng Shiqi ran as fast as he could, and after turning into a huge rock, he sank into the ground. After opening up a small space underground, Leng Shiqi first recovered his spiritual power, then took out the ball of blood, held his breath, and swallowed it in one gulp. When the ball of blood entered his body, it instantly turned into an extremely violent spiritual power, and constantly rampaged through Leng Shiqi's meridians. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. This was completely outside of his expectations. The demonic beast destruction technique didn't mention this point. But there was no other way. He could only use his spiritual power to suppress the violent spiritual power. Unfortunately, the effect was not very good. Many thoughts flashed through Leng Shiqi's mind, and finally, a touch of madness appeared on his face. Then he directly channeled the violent spiritual power into his dantian, wanting to use this powerful external force to forcefully polish his spiritual power. Normally, polishing his spiritual power was like grinding water, but at this moment, it was like a huge wave. The violent spiritual power sank into his dantian, and in an instant, it turned his dantian upside down. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's body began to tremble, and his face was full of pain, but he gritted his teeth and took this opportunity to constantly polish his spiritual power. As time passed, the violent spiritual power gradually weakened, and Leng Shiqi's spiritual power became more and more pure. Unknowingly, Leng Shiqi's spiritual power slowly gained the upper hand. It was also at this moment that a faint sound came from Leng Shiqi's body. Immediately after, his aura surged and an invisible spiritual pressure spread out, causing his clothes to flutter. 4th level of the pure spirit realm. However, after Leng Shiqi had broken through to the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, there was still some of the violent spirit energy left in his body. Leng Shiqi concentrated fully, and in just a moment he completely refined it. Immediately, Leng Shiqi opened his eyes, and 2 rays of light flashed through his eyes. Phew! Leng Shiqi finally breathed a sigh of relief. The violent spiritual power just now almost took his life. Fortunately, he practiced 3 cultivation methods at the same time, and the meridians in his body were tougher. Otherwise, his meridians would have exploded and he would have died. Chapter 49. At this moment, Leng Shiqi still had some lingering fear in his heart. However, high risks also brought huge benefits. Now, not only had he successfully broken through to the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, his cultivation had also jumped up a little. All in all, it was equivalent to 10 days of his bitter cultivation. Refining the blood essence of a rank 1 demonic beast was equivalent to 10 days of bitter cultivation. A bright light flashed through Lung Shiqi's eyes. One had to know that the thing that Blood Fog Island lacked the most was demonic beasts. He could use this method to quickly improve his cultivation. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi couldn't help but feel a little excited and said with emotion, as expected of a rank 3 cultivation method. In the next few days, Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry to return to the cave. He walked slowly like this, and from time to time he would encounter demonic beasts. He was not careless and directly used all his strength to kill the demonic beasts at the fastest speed, and then destroyed the corpses. However, the movement he made was too big, and even if he cleaned up the battlefield, he was still noticed by some people. In this way 4 days passed, and Lung Shiqi had already refined 7 rank 1 demonic beasts, and his cultivation was already at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. However, Lung Shiqi was not very happy, because he suddenly realized that even though his cultivation was at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm, the spiritual energy in his body was somewhat impure. In other words, although refining demonic beasts' blood could allow him to quickly improve his cultivation, it would also cause his spiritual energy to be impure. In the long run, it would cause his foundation to be unstable. Therefore, Lung Shiqi restrained the impulse to quickly improve his cultivation, and stopped in time, and rushed back to the area where he was originally, the withered forest. He planned to go back to the cave to rest and refine his spiritual energy. Who would have thought that he would hear the sound of fighting halfway? Strange, the eruption of cultivation resources is 3 days later, and there is no water here. Who would fight at this time? Lung Shiqi secretly felt strange, and with a thought, he quietly moved in the direction of the fighting. In this area of the withered forest, only the Yushu clan, the Belichuan, and the Mahist sect could fight. Among them, the Yushu clan and the Belichuan both had grudges with him. He might be able to gain something if he went over to take a look. After quietly approaching, Lung Shiqi hid behind a dead tree and observed. There were 2 groups of people fighting, and one of them was the Belichuan. Lung Shiqi didn't recognize the other people, so they should be from Mo Gate. There weren't many people fighting, only about 20 or so in total. Although it was called a fight, it was more appropriate to describe it as a martial arts competition, because no one revealed any killing intent. Looks like they only wanted to determine the victor, not the victor. Lung Shiqi thought to himself. There were 4 people who stood out the most in the battle. First, it was Bailey Qing and his opponent. The only person who could compete with Bailey Qing was Mo Gate's sovereign Moe. The other 2 were also pure spirit realm cultivators, and one of them was a black-faced young man. Lung Shiqi seemed to have some impression of him. Lung Shiqi silently observed the battle situation. In the end, the final victory or defeat was still on the 4 pure spirit realm cultivators. However, no matter if it was Bailey Qing or the black-faced young man, they were both in the upper hand. Looks like the Belichuan is going to win. Sure enough, suddenly Bailey Qing's long spear swept and flicked rapidly, drawing 2 rays of spiritual light in the air, forming a cross shape. He suddenly stabbed again, and the tip of the spear condensed a sharp spiritual light in the center of the cross shape, and immediately stabbed forward. Moe's expression changed. He didn't dare to take it head-on, and could only try his best to dodge, but his shoulder was still scratched by the spiritual light. 2nd level spiritual skill. My luck is not bad. Lung Shiqi looked at Bailey Qing with a little surprise. A 2nd level spiritual skill was very rare, and it just so happened to be suitable for Bailey Qing's spear skills. On the other side, that black-faced young man also barely won a move. Stop! Bailey Qing shouted. Everyone from the Belichuan immediately stopped and retreated when they heard this. Bailey Qing took 2 steps forward and said, Victory and defeat have been decided. I wonder if Sect Master Mo can afford to lose. Moe's expression sunk and said seriously, Bailey Qing, why are you so persistent? This is my business, I only want to know your choice. Alright, if you agree to bet, then you must accept defeat. Before you make a move, send someone to look for me. Moe's face was gloomy, and finally he clenched his teeth and said in a deep voice. I believe Sect Master Mo will not go back on his words. Goodbye. Bailey Qing's murderous gaze swept past Moe and the rest, and following that he smiled slightly and left with his subordinates. Seeing Bailey Qing leaving, Moe's face revealed a sinister look, and in the end he also brought his men back. Lung Shiqi witnessed everything, but he was still puzzled, not understanding what Bailey Qing wanted to do. If he wanted to force Mo's sect to join forces against the Yushu clan, then his attitude towards Moe shouldn't be like this. Moreover, the two groups of people were fighting openly, and creating such a huge commotion, it was impossible to hide from the Yushu clan. Perhaps there might be people from the Yushu clan secretly spying on them. Shaking his head, Leng Shiqi didn't have the mood to bother about them. Because with Leng Shiqi's ability and vision, it was just like playing house between them. No matter what he did, as long as it had nothing to do with him, it was fine. Following that, Leng Shiqi quietly returned to the shelter he had arranged, the cave. Entering the cave, Leng Shiqi's body gradually relaxed, and when he touched the slightly damp bed, Leng Shiqi directly laid on it and fell into a deep sleep. Since the last time he went out, it had been 1.5 months. First, he fought with the Yushu clan in the Beilichuan, and then he encountered a first-level demonic beast. After that, he accidentally discovered the underground space, and was almost discovered and even trapped by the restriction, which could be said to be a narrow escape. After escaping with great difficulty, he unintentionally got involved in the battle between the Supreme Society and Blood Moon. What's more, he didn't expect to meet the Delta Origi and help her destroy the Supreme Society. Later on, he forcefully refined the demonic blood, and almost died from his meridians exploding. Although his cultivation and ability had greatly improved, but it could be said that all these were exchanged with his life. Leng Shiqi suddenly felt very tired, every bone in his body, every meridian was faintly aching. His eyes were blurred, and his body gently fell on the small bed, and unknowingly, a light snoring sound was heard. At the same time, in a corner of the withered forest, 10 figures stood facing each other. One of them reclined on a wooden chair, peeling a juicy fruit in his hand, and then took a bite. Oh sweet! A blissful expression appeared on that person's face, and he even smacked his lips. Seeing this, the veins at the corner of Bailey Qing's eyes twitched a few times, but he suppressed the anger in his heart, and tried to speak in a calm voice. Sect Master Yu, did you understand what I said just now? Yes, it's sweet. Yushu took another bite of the fruit and continued, didn't you say that he came back? That's right. Then who's back? Bailey Qing put his hands behind his back, tightly clenching and unclenching his fists, and said word by word, Lung 10-7. Yushu was surprised and didn't continue to eat the fruit. Sect Master, you must have also realized the threat of that person. You just said Lung 10? Oh. Yushu showed a puzzled expression. Bailey Qing almost couldn't control his emotions, but in the end he said calmly, it's that Leng Shiqi who defeated you face to face, and took the second-grade spiritual weapon from you. Nonsense. What do you mean I lost? We fought to a draw, do you understand? Yushu heard this and jumped up from the wooden chair as if his tail had been stepped on. Chapter 50. Hearing Yushu's words, Bailey Qing roared in his heart, you still say you don't know Leng Shiqi? But he still continued to say slowly, then he doesn't put you in his eyes at all, and I heard that he has broken through to the 4th level of the pure spirit realm. 4th level of the pure spirit realm? Don't worry, I'm also at the 4th level. Yushu said indifferently. Bailey Qing had reached the edge of rage and was about to lose control. If Yushu wasn't at the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, he would immediately stab him with his spear. He said in a deep voice, not only that, someone saw him kill a rank 1 monster alone. What? Yushu's eyes widened, and he put away his previous sloppy appearance, and a hint of disbelief appeared in his eyes. The people around all showed a look of disbelief when they heard this news. They were terrified of a rank 1 monster, but someone could deal with a rank 1 monster alone. How strong was that person? How do you know this news? Yushu stared straight at Bailey Qing as if he wanted to see through him. Bailey Qing felt very comfortable when he saw Yushu's expression at this time, and he calmed down and said indifferently, Sect Master, you doesn't have to worry about this. I can guarantee that the news is absolutely reliable. I don't need to deceive you with false news. If the news was false, I wouldn't have come to you. So what? Leng Shiqi has the greatest hatred with your Beilichuan. If he comes back, of course he will find trouble with you first. I have no enmity with him, and I even gave him a rank 2 spirit weapon. Yushu shrugged and said indifferently. Is that so? Then I want to know who leaked the whereabouts of Leng Shiqi to me at that time. I think Leng Shiqi will also be very interested. Bailey Qing said with a touch of pride in his eyes. Ah, brother Bailey, why do you have to do this? Yushu clapped his hands and laughed dryly. Bailey Qing was already impatient and said directly, all right, I don't want to beat around the bush with you anymore. Leng Shiqi is too strong. Even if you are not afraid, what about your subordinates? How many people could be his match? If he killed one of your men, would you fight him to the death? You won't. Because you're scared. You're afraid that if you forcefully kill him, you'll suffer heavy losses and MOE and I will kick you when you're down. But we will all face the same problem. The existence of the Leng Shiqi is like a fishbone in our throat. With him around, the three of us can forget about living comfortably. Moreover, he has a grudge against you and me. Why don't we take the initiative before he comes to take revenge on us? Bailey Qing said as his body emitted traces of killing intent. You're right, but you've also said that he has the ability to kill a first-tier demonic beast alone. It's impossible to kill him just by relying on you and me. Yushu's voice also became dignified. Not only you and me but also your subordinates Qi Shui and Hua Lingling, my subordinate blood is no different, and... Clap clap. After that, Bailey Qing clapped his hands. Two people walked out from behind him. Mo Sect's Overlord Moe and Pure Spirit Realms Mo2, a total of 7 Pure Spirit Realm cultivators. Killing Leng Shiqi is not a problem. Yushu was surprised to see Moe here. Logically speaking, Mo Sect and Leng Shiqi had no grudge against each other. Sitting on top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight was the best choice. Sect Master Yu, Leng Shiqi is a common threat to all of us. If we don't get rid of him, do we have to give up all the cultivation resources that he wants? Make a decision. Bailey Qing continued to speak, his voice full of persuasion. Even if the 7 Pure Spirit Realm cultivators can defeat him, but to kill him is not 100% certain. Either we don't do it or we must kill him, otherwise there will be endless trouble. Yushu said in a deep voice. Then we'll use human lives to pile up. Bailey Qing's face was filled with hostility. Gather all the 9th level Spirit Realm cultivators, we can exhaust Leng Shiqi to death. As long as you don't hold back, he will die without a doubt. Bailey Qing's voice fell, but Yushu remained silent, as if he was still hesitating. Bailey Qing added more strength. I have specially inquired about Leng Shiqi's character and found that he is an extremely crazy person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. When we are defeated by him one by one, it will be too late to join forces. In fact, Yushu's considerations were far more than Bailey Qing's. He had seen Leng Shiqi controlling thunder and lightning to kill the blood-spotted leopard with his own eyes. He did not have the confidence to withstand that kind of power. Another layer was related to the Delta Origi. Yushu knew that the relationship between Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi was not ordinary. If they really killed Leng Shiqi, would they be targeted by the Delta Origi in future? After hesitating for a moment, Yushu suddenly turned around, his eyes emitting an icy cold murderous intent as he said sternly, 4 days later we'll make our move. Because Yushu himself was very clear that Leng Shiqi wanted to kill him very much. Bailey Qing, Moe and Yushu looked at each other and nodded. After that, the few of them started to discuss the details of their plan. At this moment, Leng Shiqi was still immersed in his sleep, totally unaware that a huge crisis was quietly approaching. Leng Shiqi slept for a full day and night. When he woke up, he felt refreshed. Leng Shiqi stretched his body, and a series of cracking sounds could be heard coming from his body like beans being fried. Leng Shiqi casually ate and drank a little, then sat cross-legged and picked up the bulging bag beside him and opened it. The bag was piled with a large amount of cultivation resources. Just the spirit stones alone were as many as 30 to 40 pieces. One must know that it was not easy for an ordinary person to have 1 or 2 spirit stones in their hands. Other than that, there were many medicinal pills, some to strengthen one's foundation, some to increase one's spiritual energy, some to regulate one's qi and blood, some to recover one's spiritual energy, etc. After Leng Shiqi sorted these into categories, he sat quietly without moving, his eyes revealing a pondering look. These resources in front of him were only a portion of a small forces collection. Although it was not the most precious, it was already a considerable amount. Leng Shiqi even felt that it was a waste for him to use it alone. This caused other thoughts to arise in his mind. Every time the cultivation resources erupted, they would be scattered all over Blood Mist Island. Not many of them would fall into the withered forest, and most of them would be divided among the 3 forces. If he was alone, no matter how strong he was, he would only be able to snatch 1 or 2. The rest would have been taken by others long ago. This was the biggest disadvantage of a lone wolf. No matter how strong you were still alone. However, Leng Shiqi had too many secrets. It was impossible for him to join other forces. Only the Delta Origi's Blood Moon was within his consideration. If he wanted to create a force he could do it with his strength, but he did not like and was not good at controlling people. He preferred to be alone and be free. After thinking for a while, Leng Shiqi suddenly had a flash of inspiration and took out a dark green bottle. His fingers kept rubbing the small bottle. Leng Shiqi's eyes became brighter and brighter. This might work. Chapter 51. 3 days later, which was the day before the eruption of cultivation resources, Leng Shiqi left the cave. After a few days of consideration, he decided to secretly control one of the forces. In this way, not only could he collect a large amount of resources, he also didn't need to be distracted. It was the best of both worlds. And the target he chose was Mo clan. In these 3 days, Leng Shiqi had secretly caught some people to inquire about the news of the 3 forces in Withered Forest. Now, among the 3 forces, Wushu clan was in the lead. Clan Master Wushu had broken through to the 4th level of Pure Spirit Realm not long ago, and there were 2 Pure Spirit Realm experts under him. Belichuan was second while Mo clan was the weakest. The weaker they were, the easier it was for Leng Shiqi to succeed. Actually, in the beginning, among the 3 factions, the 100-mile group was the weakest. This was because Leng Shiqi had once killed more than 10 members of the 100-mile group consecutively. It could be said that he had severely injured them. But later on, Mo clan actually provoked Wushu clan, and after a few rounds of fighting, Mo clan was defeated. At this time, Belichuan was quietly developing and had surpassed Mo clan in one leap. Moreover, Leng Shiqi had coincidentally seen Moe and Bailey Qing sparring and knew that Moe did not cultivate any second-level spirit skills. Even though their cultivations were similar, both were at the 3rd level of Pure Spirit Realm, but they were no match for Bailey Qing. Being suppressed by Wushu, he might be able to tolerate it, but to be suppressed by Bailey Qing, Moe's heart would definitely be filled with grievances. This was a breakthrough point. Leng Shiqi was dressed in a black robe as he sped through the night, as though he was a ghost from the abyss. About a quarter of an hour later, Leng Shiqi arrived at a small-scale campsite nearby. But at this moment he frowned. From the information he had received, there were a total of 60 to 70 people in Mo clan. But Leng Shiqi saw that there were many people inside. Roughly counting, there were more than 100 people. Leng Shiqi's mind moved and his body sank into the ground. In Mo clan's big tent, there were 7 people sitting around, 6 men and 1 woman. These 7 people were the Pure Spirit Realm experts of the 3 forces. Tomorrow was the day they decided to eliminate Leng Shiqi. They gathered here today to discuss how to lure him into their trap. As for why they had chosen Mo Gate to discuss this matter, it was because Mo Gate was the weakest and would not be able to cause any waves. After the injection of cultivation resources tomorrow, send everyone out to search for the Leng Shiqi, Bailey Qing said first. Idiot. Wushu looked at him with disdain. Ignoring Bailey Qing's ugly expression, he continued, do we need to find him? If he really came back, he would definitely fight for the cultivation resources. He would take the initiative to appear. When the time came, all he had to do was to quickly send a message. Also, those below the 9th level of the Spirit Gathering Realm do not need to know about this. Let them fight but don't kill. Otherwise it will be bad if the Leng Shiqi notices something. Bailey Qing and Moe nodded their heads when they heard that. The most important thing is that when we gather we must not rush. We must surround him and not let the Leng Shiqi escape. If he escapes, you all should be very clear about what the consequences will be. Wushu said solemnly. Bailey Qing's eyes were filled with fear. If a person who could kill a first-tier demonic beast was watching him at all times, he would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. Once the encirclement is successful, we must first exhaust him. Those who have concealed weapons, throw them. Those who don't, throw stones. He has cultivated spiritual skills. This kind of attack will not hurt him, but it will consume a lot of his spiritual energy. Furthermore, the 7 of us cannot attack together. To be honest, we are already on guard against each other. If we attack together, we will be restrained. The 3 of us will form a triangle to attack the Leng Shiqi. Once the Leng Shiqi has the intention to break through, we will support each other. The last sentence. Since everyone has chosen to do this, then do your best. I don't want anyone to deliberately hold back and cause any bad consequences. Wushu said a series of words. Finally, his eyes shot out rays of light as he scanned the few of them. Bailey Qing and the rest of them looked a little unnatural, but they still agreed. However, what they didn't know was that there was a figure hiding under the ground where they were talking, who had heard all their secret plans. And this person was the target that they were about to join forces to kill, Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi was also a little confused at this time. How did they know that I'm back? I'm such a big threat, I didn't even know. In fact, when Leng Shiqi was trapped underground for more than a month, he didn't appear for so long. This made Bailey Qing and Yushu think that they had used their numbers to force Leng Shiqi away. Especially since Bailey Qing and Leng Shiqi had a life and death grudge. When he learned that Leng Shiqi's strength had greatly increased and he had returned, he subconsciously thought that Leng Shiqi would definitely come for revenge. Thus, Bailey Qing steeled his heart and decided to get rid of Leng Shiqi. But the cost of just relying on his Beilichuan to get rid of Leng Shiqi was too great. In order to get rid of this threat at the smallest cost, he decided to join forces with the Yushu clan and Jet Black sect. He first used a large amount of resources as a bet with Jet Black sect. If Jet Black sect won, then all the cultivation resources would belong to them. If Jet Black sect lost, then he would join forces with the Beilichuan to get rid of Leng Shiqi. After that, he went to persuade the Yushu clan, which led to today's matter. After Leng Shiqi eavesdropped on the news, he quietly retreated. He was very glad that he came today. Otherwise, he would really be trapped in a situation of being surrounded and killed. Thinking about the scene of being surrounded by 7 pure spirit realm cultivators and a large group of 9th level spirit gathering realm cultivators, Leng Shiqi couldn't help but tremble slightly. Of course, he wasn't afraid because with the Hand of Earth, he was already in an invincible position. Even if he couldn't win, he could just drill into the ground and escape. What could they do to him? The reason Leng Shiqi was trembling was because he was excited. Perhaps it was because there was a warlike seed in the depths of his heart, or perhaps it was because he had refined a lot of demon blood that he had unknowingly become a little manic. But when he thought of fighting against dozens of people by himself, the blood in his body faintly boiled. Leng Shiqi took a deep breath and suppressed the restlessness in his body. Although he was excited, he hadn't reached the point of being arrogant. The expression in his eyes kept changing as if he was thinking about something. He had to do something. After pondering for a while, Leng Shiqi seemed to have made a decision, and his body sank into the ground again. In the Ink Sect camp, there were 3 groups of people standing clearly separated. Normally, if these people saw each other, they would directly draw their swords. Who knew how much hatred had accumulated between them? At this time, it was already very rare for them to be able to stand here steadily. At this time, a short youth in the Beilichuan was a little irritated from standing, so he casually took 2 steps forward. Coincidentally, the people of Ink Sect who were passing by were carrying some fruits towards the big tent. The 2 of them glared at each other and brushed past each other. The moment the 2 of them passed by each other, the person carrying the plate suddenly staggered and fell to the ground, the plate full of fruits rolling around. That person hurriedly got up, his face full of anger. He turned around and grabbed the short youth in the Beilichuan, questioning, "Why did you trip me? Are you crazy?" The short youth was puzzled and asked back, "There's only the 2 of us here. If you didn't trip me, who else could it be? I advise you to let go of your hand now." The short youth was already a little angry, but when he saw that this person was only at the 8th level of the spirit gathering realm, his tone became a little more contemptuous. "So what if I don't let go? Don't forget this is Ink Sect. I'll say it one last time, let go." "I won't let go." Scram. The short youth was enraged and punched out. The Ink Sect person didn't expect the other party to suddenly attack and was completely unprepared. He was directly sent flying and crashed into a wooden pillar. His body twitched a few times and he actually stopped breathing. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.